call the meeting to order and start with a pledge of allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Whitfield.
Here.
Counselor Morocco. Counselor Petropoulos.
Here.
Counselor Gilat.
Here.
Counselor Grimaldi.
Here.
Counselor Peeler.
Here.
Counselor Lavin.
Present.
Counselor Brennan.
Here.
Mayor Valentino.
Here. First on our agenda is a public hearing for the sale of city-owned property. So the mic's open. If anybody would like to approach the mic to talk about the sale of city-owned property.
And this is the strip over by the cracker factory, right? CCM?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll call the public hearing closed. Our next public hearing is sharing the results of the MAP grant program. If anybody would like to approach council for the public hearing for sharing the results of the MAP grant program.
David has documents for that.
David?
So part of the public hearing for a CDBG program involves just a brief overview of what we did from the city side, and then it's also an opportunity for the community to speak on the program. Before you, you all have a document that looks like this. It's some quick facts about this round of the MAP grant program. One thing I can update you on is that our last pay request went in, and I'm told has been approved, so within the next week, we should have hopefully the full $180,000 paid out, which includes $18,000 for program delivery and $9,000 for administration. That covers the staff time that ran that program. We funded 6 businesses, gave out $153,000 to those businesses, and they have all completed providing all of their expenses.
Thank you, Director West. Anybody on the public hearing? We'll call the public hearing closed and move on to the next public hearing, which is reducing the planning board from 9 to 5 members. If anybody would like to approach council on the public hearing for reducing the planning board members from 9 to 5. Call that public hearing closed. And our last public hearing is reducing the zoning board of appeals from 7 to 5. If anybody would like to come forward and address council on reducing the zoning board of appeals members from 7 to 5, please do so. We'll call that public hearing closed. Proclamations. It is my pleasure to present the proclamation for Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Whereas on the federal holiday, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, our nation honors an American who dedicated his life to fundamental principles of freedom, opportunity, and equality for all. And whereas our nation is better because of Dr. King's courage and vision that love and compassion will always triumph over bitterness and hatred. And whereas Dr. King spoke passionately about his dreams for America to be a place where all citizens will be judged by the content of their character and not by the color of their skin. And whereas as Americans we believe that all people are created equal, we will continue to speak up about injustice in honor of his dream and the rights of all. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Steve Valentino, Mayor of the City of Geneva, New York, do hereby issue this proclamation to recognize the leadership and the strength and character shown by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I encourage all residents to observe with appropriate civic, community, and service programs an actor of Dr. King's life and legacy. Next is a presentation on short-term rentals by our city manager.
Okay, I'm going to pass out just a quick overview for council members on short-term rentals. So in June of last year, our regulations were adopted by the city council. And the regulations require that owners identify the operator, acquire a 2-year permit for each dwelling unit, and then maintain certain code regulations, which the property may includes a property inspection, as well as pay a permit fee of $250 per bedroom. So as far as our process, our online system is now up and active as of today. So any short-term rental property owner can go online, fill out their permit application form, provide the funding for that, and it details how to do that on our website. Then we will follow up with the property owner using International Code Council recommendations. Either a member of our code office or the fire department's code office will go to the building, do the inspection. The inspections will begin later this month and in February. All property owners will be receiving from the city a notice of this permitting process. And then from there, we will continue to work with them to ensure that all of those short-term rentals are inspected and have those permits to operate. As far as what's going on in short-term rentals right now, the information that I provided to you is accessed on 1230. So the total City of Geneva properties that we have found are 156 that operated from December to November, December 23 to November 24. 97 of those properties were active on December 30th. With that being said, 97 had postings. The occupancy rate was at 14% of those 97. The highest occupancy rate in the city was 35% in July. So that's our high month, is July. Makeup of those units, 30% are studios, 20% have 2 bedrooms, 21% have 3 bedrooms, 29% have 4 bedrooms, and 7% are in a room in an occupied home. As far as revenue that we can look at, the host revenue was estimated from December 23 to November 24 at $1.5 million. So the revenue that the hosts are receiving is $1.5 million. And that's actually down from the previous time frame of the previous year by about $82,000. Finally, there is legislation that was adopted at the state level for short-term rentals. The legislation is really the first statewide short-term rental registry in the United States. It was designed by legislators to change who could provide short-term rentals, and it defines a short-term rental unit as a residential unit rented for 30 days. Once it is up and running, property owners or operators will have to register their rental with Department of State or a municipal system. So we'll be working with the county on what that looks like. As we already have our system up and running, we can utilize our system. Any booking service, so Airbnb, VRBO, any of those services has to work with the state to provide information on this. Again, our system works already with those companies, so we're a little bit ahead on this. We also will have the ability to collect that occupancy tax that we had discussed before. Now, how this is all going to roll out is still to be determined. This legislation was signed at the end of last month, so there will be many updates, many changes and modifications, and it will not go into effect immediately. So we're going to have to continue to keep abreast on that. We've been working with NICOM, and we'll continue to reach out to them to get more information on how it'll go forward. So it's outside of what our permitting process is, but it does give you another tool to move forward.
Thank you, City Manager. Councilors?
I have a quick
Councilor
question.
Peeler?
So one of them is just kind of like a little bit of discovery here. How do we quantify the host revenue?
So that is done by Rentalscape, which is the company that we utilize. So what they do is they look at what the what people are paying on all of those, and then what the revenue would be based on.
So the occupancy statistics, kind of like with some calculus with the published rental rates, and then they generate a figure.
Yep.
With probably a margin of error of some sort.
Absolutely.
Right, estimation.
Yep.
Thank you. I also had a question on the New York State legislation. Is there any threat of this legislation undoing our legislation or having a conflict between the two, and then we have to like strike our law or strike our ordinance or anything like that?
So how the legislation is written, and I am not the expert on the legislation, but I've spent some time reading it, is basically the municipalities that already have adopted this, it supersedes that legislation.
We do supersede it.
So,
Okay.
but we can decide to work with them. So if in a couple of years, I'm gonna give the timeline as how long it may take for them to build it.
For the state.
Yes, for the state
That's
to build
gracious.
it.
I think that's gracious.
If we decided we wanted to use their systems or work with that, we could probably go in that manner.
Okay.
And there'll be lessons learned along the way. I think the biggest piece for us is how the occupancy tax will roll out, because currently it's under home rule law and all of those pieces. There might be a better way to do that now.
Oh, thank you. And finally, I was under the impression that owner-occupied homes that are renting, say, a bedroom, are not falling under our legislation.
I believe they are.
They are?
Yeah, thinking more bed and breakfast than Airbnb.
No,
And that-
I understand, yeah, but I wasn't sure how it was tabulated because I thought we were requiring, for example, I have a home, it's got 3 bedrooms. I live there by myself and I sleep in 1 bedroom. If that person wanted to get a license, they would be forced to get a license for all 3 bedrooms, as there's 3 bedrooms associated with the property. You're not allowed to just get a permit for 1 room, I thought.
No, you can. If you only are renting one unit, 1 room, then yes, it does fall under there. The way that our permitting system is set up and the ordinance is set up.
Okay, I think that's very tricky to police.
It is absolutely tricky.
Because
to
you could
police.
just say, oh yeah, they only rented 1 room, but you're in a 4-bedroom, you know what I mean?
It could be. What we will see
Don't
though
go in any
is
other
how
room.
they're advertising the rental.
Right.
If they are only renting 1 room, we would be able to see they're only renting the 1 room in that unit. Now, if when they arrive they get a second room,
And that's only owner occupied, there's a little bit of a difference. If a property is not owner occupied, can they get away with saying we're just renting 1 room even though they're a 5-bedroom house?
so
Right? This is why I'm saying I didn't know we allowed this.
So what we are basing our permit on is what they are selling on the short-term rentals.
How they're advertising. So it's based on how they're advertising
Yes.
it, not how the actuality of the property.
Yes.
Copy that.
And I think one of the things why we did look at this is because a piece of this was about safety. And so if someone is offering a basement room with no egress and we were to go to do the inspection, it would not fit ICC codes. And so that would be a different conversation.
Sure, that's completely different. All right, thank you.
Counselor Lavin, then Counselor Brennan, I believe.
I'm assuming
Counselor
because this is not the season that we have not yet had any complaints about parties, police involvement over any licensing issues here on this.
No.
So far.
Not that I'm aware of. And when you go, if you go onto the new short-term rental page, which is live, it also does include 4 complaints about a short-term rental, how to, if it's a noise complaint, the police department. If it's
Sure.
another violation, here's how you handle that.
And I'm assuming certain things are like complaint-based, right? For example, if I park my car 4 inches over my sidewalk, for some reason, magically, I get a ticket on my car saying that I blocked the sidewalk. And it takes all but 4 hours for that ticket to arrive. But on the Airbnbs that are on my street, they can park a Ford Raptor on the corner within 6 feet of a stop sign, and for 3 days, they don't get a ticket at all. Is that because nobody just called to complain?
They know it's
Potentially.
your car.
Okay. They know it's my car, right? It's like, welcome to the neighborhood, counselor. But I was just surprised, like, how do those are a lot of the tickets complaint based, or a lot of how we handle tickets complaint based, especially when it's going to be violations like noise and parking, which are both police actions.
Yeah, those tend to be more complaint-based. We do have Chief Eveland here, not for this topic, but he could
Yeah,
Oh,
when it
chief,
comes to-
hey, no,
When it comes to a lot of the permitting type stuff, the quality of life stuff, a lot of that is complaint based. The parking, obviously, we have dedicated parking enforcement in the downtown district. Other locations in the city is going to be the proactiveness of the officer or the availability of the officer to do the parking enforcement.
thank you.
So I take this time to thank staff and this council and the previous council for putting the efforts to get us a little bit ahead of the curve on this one. I think we're in good position, so appreciate all the work. Okay, next is an update on the traffic review by Chief Evelyn and Director Venuti.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy New Year, everyone. Tonight, we'd like to discuss a few topics related to parking, as several local intersections have been brought to our attention as to small amount of concerns, pretty much one complaint at each of these locations. But because they're presented by counselors, I'd like to take the time to discuss these with you folks tonight. Real quickly, we get our parking sign and street regulations from the United States Department of Transportation. The Federal Highway Administration has a document guideline called the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Device. It's a lovely book about 9 inches tall that is filled with all kinds of information. And Chapter 2B discusses parking and regulatory signage guidance. And I say guidance because that's what it is. The signage should conform to standard shapes, colors, font size, and descriptions of locations for all kinds of scenarios. Geneva City Code 335-17 is where you can find the city's parking standard, standing and stopping restrictions. Every street that has a regulation documented is in the code. The first area of concern that's been brought to our attention recently is High Street, the intersection of Elmwood Place and Grove Street. We've received one complaint up there recently about sight distance. Most of these all relate to sight distance. Current code of Elmwood Place, there's no parking on the north side. Current code of Grove Street, there's no parking on the west side. The north side, between Pulteney and Elmwood, there's no parking at all the way up High Street. So, any recommendation would be to extend the no parking on the north side of High Street to an area across from Grove Street. I think that'd be the only thing that would make sense to do in that area. So that's something we're investigating right now, where that shaded area is. So we would have to bring a resolution forward to council, perhaps at the next meeting, if that's the direction we'd like to go. And it's a 2-reading resolution for all parking changes. Chief, have any issues up there with?
Just a
Accident.
quick one before you leave that, Director Venuti. I see a shaded area. Is that on the south side of High Street, or am I looking at this wrong?
North side.
Yeah, I'm seeing the shading, what I believe is on the south
Is
side.
that Grove or High?
Grove here,
Oh, okay.
If you can see my cursor right
Thank you.
here, Grove Street's going to be right here.
There you
This
go.
is High.
I'm looking at it backwards. Thank you for the clarification.
In Elmwood is running vertically.
Yes, sir.
correct.
I know that. Yeah, you know where that corner is. Yeah.
So it is important to note, whenever we get complaints like this, Director Venuti typically reaches out to me to see what types of complaints the police department has received. We have only just received the singular complaint from the citizen. We don't have any recorded motor vehicle accidents in this location for the year of 2024.
But the idea is to take parking away from that corner,
Correct.
not to add it, but to take it away.
Correct. Take it away.
And this is just so people don't have to make extremely sharp turns to clear the turn going eastward down High Street.
Yeah, the complaint right now is vehicles coming off of Elmwood. They have reduced visibility for vehicles coming off of Grove due to vehicles parking so close to the corner.
No accidents on that corner.
No.
I used to see a car parked across the street on Washington, right across from my street, Jefferson. We didn't need to make a complaint because every year the car would get a new dent from people trying to make the turn. So kind of the universe tends to work itself out like that. But if there's no accidents and other than just a cautious complaint, all right, thank you for bringing this to our attention. I don't know what kind of priority this is without any real accidents.
Chief, even though there hasn't been an accident and there is only one citizen asking for that change, is there any harm in creating that zone to be vehicle-free? Is that
I wouldn't say there's necessarily a harm, but then you're reducing the amount of parking that is available in the street. So for the tenants that do live nearby that are utilizing that option, they're going to have to park further away from their residence.
That's a harm.
Is that part of your considerations, evidently? That is
Mine
something you'd have to weigh.
are typically safety.
Yeah.
But living here in Geneva, I do try to recognize the other quality of life issues that decisions that we make could impact somebody. I travel this area quite frequently. I drive in a higher center of gravity vehicle, so the site doesn't really impede me as much. But I could see the concern for this. But again, whenever we make decisions relating to changing traffic enforcement, a lot of it is we're looking at the statistics, and right now we don't have any recorded accidents in this area.
Okay. That's going to come up later on, too, in this very same conversation regarding speed and whatnot on South Main Street. But you've answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll actually touch on that topic just briefly. Another area of concern has been brought to our attention is East North Street. This would be the area from east of Exchange, where you have Wadsworth and Herbert. As you know, there's a development planned for a Dunkin' site on the corner. There's currently code of no parking on North Street east of Exchange to a location of 150 feet past the bridge at Marsh Creek. I don't know if probably can't zoom that photo, but if you can see the creek is the green area.
If you know where you're looking.
So that's on the south side. And I apologize, all these maps are north oriented
Very good.
for better clarification. So a recommendation, we were also, someone brought to our attention, they were concerned at the community sign that's there. There's a neighborhood sign on the corner of Herbert and East North, just by the canal. It's probably 36 to 42 inches in height. There's a decorative brick structure built around it. Very nice little neighborhood sign. We've had one accident there while we were doing the street reconstruction. But again, there hasn't been any statistics of MVAs or pedestrian hits in that area. My recommendation would be to mimic that side of East North Street distance on both sides, the north and the south, which would eliminate parking in front of T-Mobile and Sam's Mini Mart, which is right next to the canal. And that'd be from Exchange Street down.
Well, then I have to say I'd have to pick a bone here, because if your recommendation is to reduce parking in a place that has only had one single accident, I'd go back to the High Street conversation and say we should reduce the parking there too, to eliminate the possibility for an accident.
Why?
The difference here, Counselor, is I'm taking into effect the anticipated volume of traffic that the Dunkin' site is going to propose,
Okay.
or, bring.
I appreciate it.
I definitely believe that stacking of cars is going to happen.
Okay.
My recommendations given to the planning board at that time of review indicated that
All right.
with the volume that they're anticipating.
Very good.
Different scenario.
I'd like to ask a question. Why are you inclined to think that? Counselor Brennan?
I think what I'm responding to my constituents.
No, I know, but I'm trying to figure out how one accident, which is 100% more than 0 accidents, would make you inclined to do a traffic reduction from a 0 accident, from accidents that haven't, like, how is that the proof that you needed to reduce the parking in the other area?
I'm simply asking why, what their considerations are when they make these decisions.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did misheard you. I thought you said you were inclined to think that we should reduce the other one.
Yeah, I was asking, why would you reduce parking in one area and not reduce it in another area when safety was such a small factor?
Okay,
They answered my question.
thank you. Moving on to South Main Street?
Thank you. I will move on to Washington Street first,
Oh,
please.
We got more.
The intersection of Washington near Nursery and Copeland. Everybody knows this is a big cut through north and south to get over to 5 and 20 in our inner city. So we've had a couple complaints, actually two recently, about parking of cars parked on Washington between Copeland and Nursery. Currently, there are no regulations on Nursery for no parking. I would recommend that we go to the north of both sides of Nursery, about 100 feet on the west side and probably 40 feet on the east side, and then extend the existing code that says no parking from Copeland to the east on Washington to just beyond Nursery. So that'd be on the south side of Washington Street.
For no parking?
No parking. Currently, there's a 150-foot limit, but I think we can extend that to Nursery safely and eliminate cars parking there.
So would that prohibit parking from the junction of Nursery and Washington to like 150 feet north of that junction?
Not quite 150 going north, but
Well, Nursery ends right there, so you have to go north. So you're only gonna go north.
right. So 40
There's no
feet,
restrictions there now,
40 feet on the east side makes sense.
okay?
About 110 feet on the west side makes sense of Nursery.
That's a complicated intersection to begin with, because often, for a good portion of the year, if you're coming south on Nursery and you're turning left onto Washington, there's almost no visibility there anyways, because that property there looks like an unfinished game of Jumanji half the year. So it's like you can't see down that area anyways. So that's a tricky spot. I don't know if parking is really it's gonna help a little bit.
So the property on the west is number 380. They do have shrubs.
Yeah.
We do have a code, section 100, that talks about control of growth and harmful vegetation. That could be considered if we put the no parking in place, and then there's still site distances, but the bushes appear to be manicured every time I've been up there, so that's something we could consider. The code indicates corner properties are supposed to have shrubs at a certain height.
Right, especially that's a terribly busy intersection.
That's probably
So is
an
there
alternate
parking
thing.
on both sides of that Nursery up there?
Right now, there is parking on both sides, but hardly ever do people park
Yeah, I
towards
don't think you
Washington.
get a car through if they're
No.
parked on both sides.
And the
I don't think
property
that's
owners
legal.
both have driveways. Those two corner houses both have driveways, so.
Yeah. I know that you have to a lot of times wait on that street if somebody's coming the other direction.
You have to do the snake. You have to get behind one parked car so they can get around you, and then they
Yeah.
get around the other parked car.
It's not that wide a street.
Is that South Main? Yep. Okay, so South Main, couple concerns recently brought to our attention about the crosswalks. When Lieutenant Potter was on staff, he and I looked at the crosswalks and wanted to make some changes a while ago. We had some confliction with the New York State DOT regulations. That is part of Route 14. But Chief Evil and I looked at it again, and we figured we could remove, again, this is the reaction to the action, remove 2 parking spaces on either side of the crosswalks that are, if you can picture, parallel with Pulteney Park Place on north and Park Place south, which eliminates 4 parking spaces on South Main. But the clarity of 20 feet on each side increases safety for pedestrians, and so we've put the signs up already. That's corrective action we've already taken. So your constituents may not be happy with lost parking spaces, but it's safer. Chief can speak about a speed study that we've completed up there as well.
So back in November, I conducted a speed study on South Main Street. I gave you guys 2 handouts. One of them is going to be labeled NB for northbound, and the other one is going to be SB for southbound. So I conducted this speed study utilizing our radar trailer that we have at the police department. Now, this trailer can only record speeds as vehicles are approaching the trailer and not going away from the trailer. We deployed the trailer on the curb on South Main Street between St. Clair Street and J Street. This location was chosen as it is less congested and would have less interferences. When a radar is used, there are a few things that can affect what is recorded by the radar, such as the speed of the target vehicle and also the reflective capability of the vehicle. For example, it could display a speed discrepancy on a vehicle that is traveling in front of an 18-wheeler. The radar will try to target the front vehicle, but could also batch in the speed of the 18-wheeler due to the reflective capability of the 18-wheeler overpowering that of a vehicle. So I just wanted to give you a little general background on how that radar is going to be used or how it works. So first, the trailer was deployed to record southbound traffic starting at 4 p.m., and we deployed this for a full 24 hours. During this time, a total of 4,375 vehicles were recorded. 491 of those were over the posted speed limit. Posted speed limit on South Main Street is 30 miles per hour. The average speed of all vehicles was 29 miles per hour. Now, I want to note there are 484 vehicles that are between 36 and 45. That might seem like an overwhelming amount of speeding vehicles, but please keep in mind that this is also recording vehicles that are doing 36 miles per hour, which I don't think is an egregious speed in that open area. There is a possibility, too, that I could try conducting another study and lower the parameters down to a 5 mile per hour gap as opposed to the 10 mile per hour gap that we're doing right now. This report also indicated that there were 2 vehicles traveling over 66 miles per hour with the highest being 78. I do not believe that is accurate whatsoever. I believe that was a batching incident where it's taken 2 35 mile per hour vehicles and batching them together. So if you look at
Or
the...
somebody was really trying to get out of town.
Or maybe we got a UAP going on. Look. UFO going by.
So if you look at the other report, this one's going to be for northbound traffic. We had a little bit less vehicular traffic for northbound. 3,091 vehicles were recorded. 328 were above the posted speed limit. The average speed was 30 miles per hour in a 30 mile per hour zone. And we had 325 that were between 36 and 45 miles per hour. So given the findings of this speed study, I requested our sergeants to have the officers pay special attention to speed enforcement in the area. It is not my recommendation that we necessarily need to reduce the speed limit on South Main Street to a 25 mile per hour. I don't think that's going to address the issue as far as speeding. In my experience, I think targeted enforcement is going to be our best option for that.
Counselor?
Chief, what are the rights of your officers with 16-wheelers, 18-wheelers? Do you have the right to stop them without speed, but with the right to review their books, to look at weight, to look at other aspects? Is that a right of the police to do, or do you have to have some sort of...
We have to have some sort of probable cause, yeah. Obviously, if they're off the truck route, that's going to be the probable cause for most officers there. There are certain officers, we don't have any that are certified in Geneva. If they're going to conduct an actual inspection of an 18-wheeler, they're certified in commercial vehicle enforcement. That is something you can set up. A lot of times they do it in conjunction with the state police. We haven't had anybody certified in that since Officer Tim Peters passed away.
So there is a way to have a systematic stopping of all trucks that are coming during a period to do that kind of check without a speed or an otherwise probable cause. You have the right to do that.
Correct. Kind of getting out of my wheelhouse. I'm not a commercial vehicle enforcement guy. It's my understanding when you conduct those checks, you're taking the vehicle off the road. So I think that does affect their logbook a little bit.
So if you were going to do that, let's say on Lockland Road, still in the city, but heading up 14, and we said we're going to do that at least twice a month, and let that be known that we're going to be checking books, looking at weights, all those things to essentially create a disincentive, in my view, for these 18-wheelers to come through the narrow passage between both side parking on Route 14 near the colleges. That's something within our wheelhouse. You just need somebody trained to do it.
Well, yeah, we would also have to work in partnership with the state police most likely. We don't have weights or scales to weigh the vehicles, which is part of the inspection process.
Well, but they also carry their own reports on their weights when they're coming to the most of them are garbage trucks coming to the Seneca, town of Seneca's place. So they report their own weight because they're going to be weighed up there at the dump as well. So you don't need to put out your own scales. You can see what their own reported weight is. I'm just looking for ways to show more scrutiny of what's a real, I mean, it's in my view, absolutely inappropriate that 18-wheelers come down through Cemetery Hollow. I know it's a state road, and then they come up to where we have parking on both sides. You mentioned also that the state has suggestions or guidelines. If we wanted to eliminate some parking on South Main, which I know might encourage faster speeding because the road will be wider, do we have the right to remove parking on one side of that street or both sides of that street near the colleges? Or is that a separate state approval?
Yeah, the vehicle traffic law says that if it's a state road but it's maintained by the municipality, that the DPW, Department of Public Works, could.
Remove parking.
Correct.
Because we have there a situation where we've created a nuisance attraction of a boathouse and a walkway down to the thing, which is bringing people in from out of town even to park there and go down, be along the lake. And when there's parking on both sides there and two tractor trailers are coming through, not to mention cars speeding, it really does, it's not a safe space. I know that you'd have to look for accidents, and there've been a few just in the last few weeks there, but I think we should look at, I know that the local residents of my ward have been concerned that we would put in flashing lights that flash all night long, but there are crosswalk lights that are triggered by a patron coming through. And I know those are somewhat expensive, but putting a number to it to see if we have to wait for a college kid to get killed, or locals who use it. The kids were in from Newark in the fall, stopping down to the boathouse and parking there. I don't know that we sound like, I think, a little bureaucratic in our efforts to get all the threats of that roadway under control. The trucks, I really think if there was a way to do a twice monthly, let it be known that in this town, we're going to be checking trucks' books because we can. Not necessarily that we have to set up weight check tests. We can look at their own book, but we're going to look at everything else, how long they've been on the road, what their weight is, all the things we have a right to look at. Those trucks are also tearing up the clover leaves. And I don't know that anybody's reimbursing us for the damage they do along those streets. I know if you look at the bridge, and I know Mr. Venuti and his fine crew see that bridge is questionable at times, given the kind of traffic they're getting. I think we could make a policy decision that that's an area that we need to be better at. It's unique to the city. And the enforcement seems to be, in my view, often your officers down in Cemetery Hollow shooting back up. And that's not really where the speed damage is. It's easier to see them, it's easier to hide, but the damaging speeding is happening. Those 400 are putting people at risk further up where we've got a major employer bringing their kids across the street for an attraction down at the lake and sailboat races and everything else. I just think a more creative thought about enforcement and to not just round up the usual statistics, but look there. I see that there all the time and there isn't a day goes by if you sit there at those benches for a few hours and see things you wouldn't want your kids doing when they're away at college. in front of, in the conditions that we let that road get to. Just some thoughts in terms of, I'd get rid of parking on the lakeside immediately. You're attracting people there for that very view, and then loading cars in. And most of the cars that park there, I've talked to the colleges, I'm a big college supporter, but they have campus parking that could easily take the place of that stuff. And the professors living in Ithaca and Rochester like to park right outside their office. But that's what that is. It's not citizenry going to a commercial venue. So anyway, just some thoughts as we're weighing out how to make that stretch of road safer.
Yeah, Council, I do just want to touch on two things. You made a lot of comments there.
Yeah.
So one thing that we are looking at are different enforcement strategies for sure. The difficulty we run into with South Main Street is there's not many areas that are susceptible for us or good for us to really run radar. A lot of times, statistically, you park on the side of the road, somebody's going to slow down when they see a marked police car, and then they speed up as soon as they drive back. That's a lot of times why we try to be covert when we're doing traffic enforcement. I do want to share some stats as well for motor vehicle accidents for South Main Street, because I only touched on the last, for 2024 for the other locations. So I did go through our records and South Main Street looking for pedestrian motor vehicle accidents. Since 2014, we've had a total of 56 pedestrians struck in the city of Geneva. 5 of those have been on South Main Street. We did have one recorded in 2024. I believe there were 2 people that were struck. And then the last one prior to that was 2021. So I did want to share those stats with you as well.
There were also some side swipes of trucks against vehicles, one that sat out there for about 2 months after it was hit.
Yeah, how many accidents have there been?
Have you looked at the accident rate?
I did not. For this one, I specifically wanted to focus on pedestrian because it seems like that was the questions or the main concern that we're getting pointed to.
If you
Mr.
don't,
Brennan?
please, just a couple of things, Chief. Back to the speed limits conversation, 25 versus 30. I'll get to that in a minute, but this struck me. How about speaking of speed trailers, but I'm a fan of the flashing speed signs that tell you you're going over XYZ, and they're fixed 365 days a year. Is that something, also, Mr. Vidoy, is that something this city would be allowed to erect at certain points on South Main Street, or is that something that DOT has to do?
No, Counselor, we would be allowed to do that.
Okay.
Much in tying into Counselor Lavin's talking about the rectangular flashing beacons. I didn't get a price on the speed signs that you're referencing, but the flashing beacons are about $10,000 a piece before install.
Yeah, that was on my list.
Maybe we could fundraise that from the college in about an hour and a half, probably. But
Well, it's worth thinking about, because I agree, but also I agree, meaning to say I think that's an effective use of technology to reduce speeding. But enforcement, how much enforcement? I don't know. Let me see how to phrase this. How often would your department be able to enforce speed limits on a 365-day year on South Main Street, except for Cemetery Hollow, which I see that a lot. But I mean, in any other part of the city, are you doing a lot of speed enforcement?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that officers are doing throughout their shift. A lot of times
Okay.
when you see them out driving around or patrolling, they're actively patrolling, and one of them is they're conducting, radar enforcement, speed enforcement, and other vehicle and traffic enforcement while they're checking their post assignments.
Okay.
So that is something we routinely do. You don't see it as often, stationary radar enforcement on South Main Street, and a lot of that is because just the lack of the areas to sit. One thing I would like to see, and I think we'll be in a better opportunity to do it this year with our staffing levels increased and having a younger department, but we have a lot of reimbursable grant overtime. In June every year, the state reimburses overtime for what they call a speed week, and officers will come in and work however many hours they want, reimbursed by the state, strictly dedicated to speed enforcement. So this is one area I would like to look at.
Well, one of the reasons why I'm considering about the speed thing, and I'll be brief, how many more vehicles do you think, could you find out, are registered in Ontario County versus, let's say, even just 3 years ago or 5 years ago? I would recommend, thinking out loud here, that the percentage is significant, which is part of the problem.
Yeah, I certainly think there's more vehicles on the road nowadays than there were.
There certainly
If
are
that's
more
what you're
than there were
alluding to.
20 years ago, but I'm saying even in the last 5 years, I'm willing to bet that there's a great, and then electric vehicles or electric scooters and bikes are being another conversation for another time. But I'd like to find out that answer. If you could look into that, I'd be grateful.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I have Counselor Pachapos, then Counselor Peeler, and then we'll come back to you, Counselor Levin.
Yeah, I just want to make this quick. So thanks for providing the statistics. This is for middle of November, 24-hour period. I figure 1 out of 100 cars is going too fast and 1 out of 1,000 is going way too fast. What's it like in the summer statistically? I mean, obviously there's going to be more traffic, but is the volume going to kind of slow things down on its own, or is thoughtlessness going to take hold and the chances of fender benders increase?
That's really tough to answer, Counselor. I would just say that based on my experience, I wasn't overwhelmingly shocked by the numbers that I saw. I do wish the parameters were a little bit different because I think 36 miles per hour on that stretch of South Main is grossly different than 45 miles per hour. So that is something I would like to do, and if I conduct that study, I'll make sure I get that to Council.
Counselor Peeler.
Just for clarity, because I've lost my ability to focus on this entire conversation, particularly about South Main Street, because we're talking about every problem under the sun on it. Right now, we're just looking at removing some parking spaces by that crosswalk so that we can help the visibility of pedestrians, not reduce the speed of vehicles, but simply remove a couple of parking spaces at that specific intersection by, what's the road called? The Naked Lady Statue Circle?
Park Place.
Yeah. So, right by there, Park Place, I think that's reasonable.
Yeah,
That's all I'm gonna say. I think
safety.
that's reasonable. There's a couple spaces. We're always going to hear about parking problems on South Main Street and speed problems. We just will. We're always going to hear about it. But that's. I mean, that's if 5 pedestrians were dinged in that spot out of the 50 that were studied, it's happening, right?
Sure.
So, and I think everybody knows, especially if you've got a child, even a college kid, they're crossing the street without looking. They're checking their phones. They're on every distraction under the sun. So giving motorists the better visibility of them coming into the street is reasonable, because you step out between 2 parked cars, you're invisible until you hit the road.
Thank you.
So I think it's reasonable. That's it. I wanted to make sure that this was the conversation and we weren't actually talking about realistically removing parking anywhere else on South Main Street in this conversation.
One more comment to Councilor Lavin. The arterial cloverleafs
Yeah.
are the responsibility of the city under the arterial maintenance agreement we have with New York State DOT. So those cloverleafs most likely will be on 2025 street improvement program.
I was just going to mention to you, just for your information through the manager, that having been the recent victim of a rear ending in the Cloverleaf, part of the problem I see now with the redone 5 and 20 is that cars coming up from 5 and 20 when they go into the 2 lanes again, they tend to, that signals for some reason a real increase in speed, so that when you're coming into the Cloverleaf, you often have to stop, pull out so you can see, and then pull out. And I was rear-ended by a young driver who assumed that the first move in so you could see the car coming at 50, which is what they were doing up, is another place where our new design of 5 and 20 has encouraged some odd driving there, both coming up 5 and 20 and also the entry from the Cloverleaf into 5 and 20. Because you can't, a car coming 50 under the bridge coming up 5 and 20 is not really visible from the normal stop sign.
Those points have been addressed with New York State DOT's the traffic safety team.
Yeah.
The project was designed per all parameters. We have asked them twice now for a traffic study to reduce the speed in that area
Yeah.
and increase the signage,
Yeah.
and they're reluctant to make any changes at this point. So we will Now that this recent milling and paving operation between Lake Street to the Seneca County line is complete, we will now ask them again.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the effort, and I also just did want to mention that on the weekends, the traffic on South Main is a little different because of the big winery operations, that I think another thing we could do is announce our plan to do some DUI sweeps, even in the middle of the day there, which would be easier to do because they are coming in drunk from Himrod, and sounds like a good song title. But
Sure does.
and you see them getting out of their cars, and there's definitely some overindulgence there. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chief. Next is a presentation for the Police Budget Advisory Board overview by Chair Anthony Noon.
Well, good evening. So we'll move on to the fun stuff now. Amaris and I are here today to kind of revisit the Police Budget Advisory Board and kind of give an overview as to what we do, why we were established in the first place. As you know, it was there was a lot of controversy around its initial establishment, but I'm proud to say, at least over the time that I've been on the board and even the last few years, it's definitely heading in a fantastic direction, and I think it's become an asset to the chief, as well as an asset to the city comptroller as well. So if we do have a presentation, can you click on that? I'm really not a tech guy, but they said about the pointer, so I'll see what I can do here. Perfect. So as we know, it was created in 2020 to provide a greater transparency of the Geneva Police Department budget. As part of that process was examining line item expenditures associated with policy priorities. We meet once a month, and that's how it's been all along, with the police chief and the city comptroller and the city council liaison. So in this case, our city council liaison during this term is Peter Gelati. And the current members are Amaris, Rick Hoyt, and Elisa Nipa, Elise Nipa, who was just appointed. So thank you for those appointments, as well as myself and BJ. And you can see that Amaris is our member with the most seniority. So thank you, Amaris. And we do have some newbies, and then even myself. I mean, I haven't even been on quite a year yet. But it's definitely been a really great experience so far. I think we're really making the board more focused. We're creating a lot more structure, a lot more organization, and really working cohesively, like I said, with the police chief and the city comptroller, and streamlining a lot of things, getting educated about a lot of different topics, and kind of using each other as a resource. So it's definitely been a valuable experience for me thus far, and I really look forward to what's to come, which we will talk to you about here in a second. So Amaris is going to talk to you briefly, given her seniority, about the history of the Police Budget Advisory Board.
You know, I just realized I did this thing on the slide that I should have learned my lesson about. I taught a class at Nazareth this past semester, and all my slides were always too jam-packed, and I didn't learn my lesson. My students were yelling at me, and I did it again. So I've only been on the board for a year and a half, but there were many other iterations of the board, many different members prior to that. So I just wanted to, because I don't know how often the board was presenting, that's just like my lack of knowledge, to city council, but I did want to encapsulate what I think is the most valuable about the prior work that the board was doing. So the board did do a lot of different in-depth reports and research, independent research regarding law enforcement budget priorities. It is actually on the city's website, but the one I think that is most helpful is the one in the area of mental health response, because that's also something that our current chief would like to see happen. And we hear from the community that in terms of law enforcement response, because, you know, we ask law enforcement officers to do so many things. It's like, you know, be ready to sacrifice your life to save someone, you know, like respond to the school shooter, but then like when someone is having like a mental health crisis, like have these like soft skills and like help them like out of the crisis. I mean, like this is it's like probably the hardest job in America that we ask for our officers. And so what was helpful about this research was just showing what different agencies are doing around the country of how do we deal with the fact that we have seen a surge in mental health issues in recent years, especially after the pandemic, and what are different agencies doing around the country. So one of the models is having officers just having mental health training and responding on their own. Another is having a co-response model where you have officer responding with a mental health professional like a social worker, so they're responding together so an officer can make sure it's safe, but there's not a imminent risk of danger. Or there's actually only one jurisdiction, but they're actually having mental health folks respond themselves directly to these kinds of calls. And so last year, we did have different guests come in to talk about different issues, and one of them, Elise Nepa, became a member of PBAB. We didn't scare her away after being a guest speaker to us. So Jim Kennedy, I mean, he's a mental health professional. He's also the county supervisor, one of the county supervisors. He came in January 2024. We talked about this issue about law enforcement and mental health response. In February, not 2924, not 900 years in the future. Now fully chief, but at that time he was acting chief, and Elise were our guests. And then in April we had Lieutenant Keith Green and Shelley Basilio and Martin Corbett from HWS. They have different behavioral intervention teams, and they talked about that process. So basically, I took the minutes, so if you want to read the minutes and get more details about that, that's available. We're happy to tell you a little bit more about what we learned directly from those folks. But the big takeaway was that everyone that we talked to and kind of like having experts in the mental health field talk about, like, if GPD is going to have a mental health professional come on board, if that would be something that would be put into the budget, that the consensus that it is safest to have a co-response model, but that would kind of be the best practice. And so it was interesting to hear that from different experts. So that's a recap of our recent history.
All right, so where we want to go. So we want to be more engaged with you as a council. That's including presenting more frequently. It would be nice to be able to stand up here and be able to reference a date of when we last came to talk to you. We're definitely going to be working on a whole bunch of initiatives coming up, as you're going to see here in a second. So it'd be, I think, in everyone's best interest if we were able to come and communicate that with you. We want to be an advocate for the needs of the police department and the community. And obviously every function of government is important, but public safety has been and always will be the number one priority, and the most imperative one. Because without a safe city, no one's coming to Geneva, and a lot of people are probably going to leave Geneva. So it's important that not only do we keep our residents safe, but also those who continue to protect and serve us on a daily basis of our police department as well. The board sees several important needs that we recommend that the city manager and city council need to ensure investment in. Obviously, you just went through a budget season. In every year, I know personally, budget cuts are a major point of contention, very difficult decisions. And unfortunately, Geneva continues to live in a world where we have a very, very tight budget situation every year with, unfortunately, not a whole lot of growth and not a whole lot of extra revenue laying around. But when we continue to focus on public safety, as we were saying, being a number one priority, that we need to invest in vehicles due to constant wear and tear from patrolling. So just recently, as you know, the chief requested 2 new vehicles, and he was only given 1. His original plan was to replace our SRO vehicle and GV14, which are both older vehicles and have higher maintenance costs. Council again did grant 1, which will replace the GV14, but you still have the other issue of not having the other vehicle. And I remember being on council, the vehicle, our last budget in 2023, vehicles was another point of contention during that time as well. So the need for continuation updates of the vehicles are super necessary. Obviously, they have 5 Dodge Durangos in their fleet, which have shown significant coolant issues. So on one day, they had 3 vehicles out of maintenance, or out for maintenance, and an officer inside the public safety building because they didn't have a patrol vehicle for them to drive. So when we talk about adding different jobs, such as policing tractor trailers that are coming down South Main, the increase in break-ins, both in businesses and on people's public property, vehicles included, as well as just a whole host of issues that the police respond to daily. They obviously have to get from one end of the city to the other end of the city. And without the proper vehicles, I mean, that last situation I just read to you is deeply, deeply concerning. And it was obviously a concern for the chief. And I would hope that it's a concern of everyone in this room and everyone in the city. Because when we don't have vehicles that can get the police from point A to point B, we have a major problem. So again, I understand the budget constraints around that. And I know the chief works diligently with the city manager and city comptroller to continue to find inventive ways, if you will, to get the necessary materials. But the vehicles are definitely an area that has become, unfortunately, a major concern that definitely needs to be addressed. So something to keep in mind, I think, for council to keep moving forward. And obviously, we're going to continue to come back and keep hammering home the same points and amongst new points as well. And then, as Amaris just touched on, which she did a fantastic job, Amaris is absolutely super well-versed in my opinion, in the mental health profession and what the needs of that profession and what they could bring to the city of Geneva. And so that's another area that we definitely want to continue to hammer home, the need to bring on board that type of personnel, and then work with the chief as to what that might look like and what that might do for the city. And the biggest thing is the inclusion of the 2 police staffing positions that unfortunately were cut during the 2020-2021 time, when we had when the police department was under heavy scrutiny. And unfortunately today, we're 4 years removed, almost 5, that the police department is feeling that cut of those 2 positions this far removed, which is a major issue. So thankfully enough, things have kind of shifted. And currently the police department, just to refresh your memory, is at 31 full-time police officers out of 34. 2 of those vacancies are police officers, and one's a sergeant position as well. And then they currently do have 1 officer out on long-term disability. And as you may remember, I know I well do, in 2020, the Division of Criminal Justice Services of New York State conducted a third-party study on our staffing levels, which was a very lengthy process. And they determined that at a minimum, we should be at 34 police officers, and out of those 34, there should be at least 20 uniformed officers, so assigned to patrol. So that doesn't include detectives, school resource officers, or civil officers. And currently they have 2 SROs, 3 detectives, and 1 civil officer. And they have 16 uniformed police officers to staff amongst 3 shifts. And they do have a cover shift from 7:30 p.m. to 4 a.m. However, that's not covered currently due to staffing. So when we think of the recent break-ins that I just referenced, that we really need the increased presence of police officers in our community. As we highlight here, particularly with the increase in bike patrols and walking patrols, as well as being able to have that community engagement. It's awesome. I remember hearing many stories of police officers going down to different living communities here in the city, and engaging with students playing basketball, engaging with just people in general, just general conversation. You know, you're walking the beat, you see people, you're able to stop and talk. But unfortunately, due to staffing, so even going back to, having officers be able to police South Main, whether it be for speeding or for tractor trailers, we don't have the people to do our basic bare minimum job as it is at times with staffing. So again, thinking about staffing levels moving forward, bringing those 2 positions back that were eliminated 4 years ago is so key to addressing the current needs of our community and, again, keeping our residents safe. People are not going to commit crimes if they're constantly seeing police presence. just they're not gonna. They're gonna be deterred. But unfortunately, there's many days that our staffing is so minimal that that police presence just doesn't exist. And also, I know overtime is always a huge conversation as well when it comes to budgets. And obviously, if we have more staff, that's going to drastically increase overtime costs as well. So really, in the long run, you might upfront spend the money off the bat for those 2 officer positions, for example. But in the long run, you're going to save a lot of money due to those drastic overtime cuts. And also, obviously, having more staff decreases burnout amongst police officers. And then continuing to invest, again, in the safety of our residents and thinking about, as we move ahead, new incentives to provide recruits to want to come to Geneva. So as you know, there's only so many divisions within our police department. So there's not a whole host of different divisions that, a police officer can be like, hey, I really want to take on this K-9 unit. That's just an example. That might incentivize someone to either stay with the department or to come. Hey, Geneva has a K-9 unit. I have this training because of the current police department that I'm with. I can bring that training to Geneva. I want to come to Geneva because it's just a fantastic place to live, so on and so forth. So as we move forward and we continue to address the budget situations, but also continue to grow our police department, our public safety, we also want to create the incentives. And we encourage you guys to continue to think about implementing incentives that would drive people to want to come here. Because obviously if they're coming here and they're working here, they're spending money here, which keeps that money in our community. And then it just has a great domino effect from there. And, another area that, a division unit that we could potentially use, you think about drone technology. The chief and I and our board was just recently talking about the use of drones. So hopefully we'll be able to come to you with some information on that as we continue to dive into that a little deeper, starting at our next meeting. But also thinking about like a marine recreational division. So again, because of our lakefront. So we have all sorts of different divisions that we could implement in our police department that would give people the incentive to stay, but also to come, which would be fantastic. So yes, I know money is a huge thing, but again, those are just kind of food for thought moving forward. Because again, we should all be about looking into the future and continuing to make this a great place to live, work, and grow. So I'm going to be quiet and leave the last few for Amaris to address.
We had the opportunity as a board to do a tour of the police facilities. And we've also had an opportunity to learn about the city's record management system. So I know that there's been a resolution short-term to partner with Ontario County in terms of the records management system, but my understanding is they'll be changing in a couple of years. So conversation is going to come up again about how the police department is managing its data. And it just really struck me as like everything, I work for state government, like data is everything, whether it's a public or private sector. And I was really struck that the existing system that's going to be transitioning, that it doesn't match. I'm not going to articulate this quite correctly. I don't remember what it doesn't have all the data points that to allow for the city to apply for federal grants, because we don't have the information, in our records management system to be able to say like, okay, like this is like what is actually happening in the city. And so since I'm like talking in very generic terms, the chief can tell you in more granular detail like what that actually means. But we need to have a system that allows us to be able to apply for grants. It allows us to understand like what is actually happening in the community in terms of policing. And if we don't have a good system for our officers to put in their information, then we're not going to be able to have that data to understand like what is happening for our police department and to inform not just the budget, but like deployment of resources. So that's definitely something that I think knowing that's going to be an issue coming up in a couple of years, like as a budget advisory board, we're going to be keeping our eye on that, and that's something that we'll continue to talk to you about. I can't believe I'm the one talking about the shooting range upgrades, but you were supposed to do that.
Sorry.
But because we did the physical tour, it was a little bit shocking to me to be like, wow, there's not even a bathroom here. And we do have female officers. So I don't, we need officers to be able to use their weapons appropriately. It's nice that they don't have to go, they can be on their shift and they can do work at the shooting range that they need to do to qualify. So that way they're available for an emergency basis without having to go to 25 minutes away. So it is something that, having seen it, it definitely we drove down the bumpy road. I've actually been there twice now because I also did it for the Citizens Police Academy in 2016. It is a little, I would just say a little frightening.
Rustic?
Rustic, yes, rustic. That is yes, it sounds like an Airbnb location. It's rustic. Not rustic in a good way, not in a charming way. And so that is also something that it definitely seems it could use investment. If we're going to actually have this facility for our officers, there's definitely a lot of deferred maintenance, I would say, regarding that. So that's something else that going there in person was eye-opening for me in terms of because I was okay, why, who cares about the shooting range? Well, once I saw it in person, I was well, if we're going to have this facility, you need a facility that's actually usable, and it's not very usable right now. So thank you very much for entertaining us. I think we didn't do our 8 to 10 minutes. That's what we shot for. Hopefully, we tried.
But no, thank you. And I would suggest, if any of you have never been to the shooting range, just to piggyback off of that, take a venture out there. It really is very eye-opening. I wish I went when I was on council, because it's definitely, first off, you wouldn't even think of it as a shooting range when you first went out there. If someone just brought you out and was like, hey, let's go down this road, you'd be like, oh, no electricity. You probably definitely would notice the bathroom thing, and it looks nothing like what you might picture a shooting range being. So definitely need of repair. And just touring the public safety building in general, seeing desks that, and I did do that while I was on council, but seeing desks that don't open kind of seems like a normal thing, that you would have a desk where all the drawers were, but people don't. The ventilation in the area where they could handle drugs and different things like that, there are none. So there's a lot of real eye-opening things at the public safety building too that definitely need to be addressed. And that building is kind of showing its age when you go into certain parts of it. And so just again, all budgetary things to keep in mind moving forward. But just to piggyback off of her, thank you for entertaining us. And we really appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll be back again soon to continue to keep you guys updated.
I believe there's a couple questions. Councilor Petropoulos and Councilor Peeler.
Get in the mic.
Councilor Lavin.
First of all, thanks so much for your presentation. It was very informative. I'm a little confused now because I recall we talked to the chief, but we have 31 personnel at present. There are 2 police vacancies. And are there 2 other positions that need to be brought back, or those 2 positions, the vacancies need to be filled?
I'm going to let the chief quickly mention that because I don't want to mess up the numbers of.
Yeah, right now we are a 34 person department. In 2020, 2021, we were a 36 person department.
So in other words, those positions would need to be brought back on paper at least in the short term.
So,
Okay.
to be clear, they would need to be recreated through the civil service process. They have been completely abolished in 20 and 21.
So would that entail a resolution first from us, or is that something only the county can do? Or?
So hold on, because I think there was some confusion. So there were actually 4 positions that were taken away at that time. 2 were unfunded, and 2 were abolished completely. The 2 that were unfunded were refunded in 22. I'm trying to remember when I started. 22 is when we refunded those 2 positions. The 2 that were abolished remain abolished at this time. If you were to bring them back from being abolished, you would need to put it into a budget motion and then do a formal resolution. And just for your awareness, and I think I had sent this to council members, a roughly cost for a new officer, training and all of that is about $100,000 to $120,000 per officer. And then when they grow through their steps, our officers cost anywhere between $120,000 to $200,000. annually.
Thank you.
And that does not include benefits. I want to take that back. That's just pure salary and training costs.
Counselor Peeler and then Counselor Lavin.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate it. Anthony, it's a pleasure to hear you speak. Again,
Thank you.
your the wit and clarity is just, I didn't have any questions while you were talking, so I miss you, bud. I'm not happy about what I just heard, because I was under the impression, Mayor, maybe you want to chime in, I thought we did reinstate the 2 abolished positions and were left with 2 unfunded positions, because that's what I thought we voted on when we tried to fix or make a repair for those abolished positions. So that's not what we did?
It was a partial repair.
I would have to say it was a real balk. Well, we should have just had 4 unfunded positions and reinstated the 2 abolished and then played defense. It would have required far less legislation down the road. Sorry, but that's what I thought we were doing. I'm just upset about that, because I was under the impression we fixed it, and we didn't. So, secondly, I got 2 questions, and it could be the chief, it could be to Anthony. So, how many officers do we need to bring back to guarantee a night patrol? I think it's unsettling that we don't have a night patrol. Because would you say from 1 a.m. to something a.m. we have nobody on the streets?
No, we have a night patrol, chief.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have a cover shift from 7:30 to 4. However, that's not covered due to staffing.
But it's not covered.
Correct. Yeah, we have a cover shift that does 7:30 p.m. till 4 a.m. That's utilized for roll call. So when night shift, we're doing a shift swap. Those officers can stay out on the road, and we always have that presence, and also to help mitigate some of the overtime. But right now, we don't have anybody assigned to that. But we do always have police officers on overnights.
Okay.
So you have 4 shifts, just to be clear.
Thank you.
And
That's
the
some
cover
clarity.
shift is that additional that
When I
goes
heard
between
uncovered,
2.
I thought that means literally this is, now's the time to go toss a car. So anyway. So the second question is, how much is that record management software update? Because I don't remember that being on the proposed budget, nor did we cut it. There was a software update on the IT side. We needed to do Windows Server, and I think we still voted for that Windows Server to go through, even though it doesn't need to go through till 2026.
Yeah. If I can start, and chief, and we just had this. So this has been a regular update for council in the ongoing updates. Our records management system, we needed to go with a new system. We were working with the county to make that happen. There has been an increase in that expense. We had to work through that. We actually met with the county this morning, and they have to approve the contract through some of their committees, but we are hopeful. I think we can say we are going to be able to proceed with that new software. It wasn't a financial. We have the funding for that.
Oh.
Where the additional investment is if we could not piggyback off the county system and had to go it alone, then it would be an additional cost we hadn't budgeted for around $50,000 to $60,000. So we are at this point using the funding that's already been allocated, and we'll be able to do that. Obviously, that meeting just happened this morning to confirm that. It does need final. We'll have legal review the contract that we'll have with the county. There may be some slight additional costs, but not at that $50,000, $60,000 mark.
That's it. That's the end of my questions. Thank you very much.
Counselor Lavin.
Deeply appreciative of the officers, the range of duties the officers have to do, and the PERT teams, as they're referred to around the country, psychological emergency response teams, are almost becoming common, and it's a good thing to see if we could get to a point where you have that kind of mixture of things. And I deeply appreciate what I'm hearing from this group. It almost sounds like the kind of committees that could sift through some of the things that we need to hear with more authority than just the a shade tree team coming in without engagement each week or each meeting with the council members. So I think you're demonstrating, in my view, the value of a true committee review of some of these things. And thank you very much, Amaris. I know you've been doing this for a long time, and Anthony, we're here, and now you're there, and that's a really good thing. I do, the reality, the financial realities of the city are insoluble in some ways, And I do think that it would be great if a committee like yours was a strong voice for analyzing the ability to do some of these things jointly with other agencies. The county is doing something really innovative with gathering up cases in advance. Families who want the police to know that they have the kind of kid or relative who is going to be difficult and will have difficult times, so that when they show up for something, they're not starting from scratch. And I think that kind of collaboration where city and county overlap would be, put us at really a kind of cutting edge of knowing when we have a violent police possibility, but not caused by criminality, but by illness, in advance of these cops showing up, strolling into an unknown situation on a dark street at the night and having to figure whether they need to have their gun ready or, it's a very difficult thing. So that's great, important work. And I'd love to see us wrap our arms around a group like this as a formal committee that comes every month, that legislation goes through, and we see the kind of scrutiny you're giving things like the statistics and the needs with more authority than just the volunteers. But I appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Mars. Appreciate it. Thank you for the whole board. And you, Chief, too. Yeah, we'll give Adam a little kudos to it, too.
You pay for everything, Adam.
Okay, next on the agenda is consideration of meeting minutes from November 20th, December 3rd, December 4th, and December 17th. I need a motion to approve those minutes. Counselor Peeler, seconded by Counselor Gilat. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Whitfield,
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos,
Aye.
Counselor Gilat,
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi,
Aye.
Counselor Peeler,
Aye.
Counselor Lavin,
Aye.
Counselor Brennan,
Aye.
Mayor Valentino.
Aye.
Motion carried.
I don't have anybody signed up for public comment. Do I?
It's on the podium.
Nope, I wasn't. Charmaine? Okay. My mistake for not grabbing that.
I don't think everyone's here.
First, I have Daniel Beckers. Next, I have Jeffrey Geiger. Lastly, I have Charmaine Gallagher. I almost said Devaney.
Sorry, I answered it both. I'm Charmaine Devaney Gallagher. I grew up in Geneva, lived in Geneva my whole life, and I'm here about the parking on South Main Street. I have an aunt and uncle my aunt just passed away, but he lived to be 102 and she was 99. I took care of him for the last 10 years. I hate the parking on South Main Street. They gave their car away 13 years ago to my son, so they never had a car. But for me to go and try and get them to a doctor's appointment, to bring groceries into their house, to do anything for them, if it weren't for Bob Schick, I'd be walking a block. And I've been known to take the wheelchair to get the groceries to bring them back to the house because the parking, don't have a nice word for it, on South Main Street. South Main Street was not designed for parking. Mr. Lavin, the house that you live in, they have this horse post still out front. It was horse and buggy. Now these houses have become so expensive to live in, most of the people rent them out. So then instead of having maybe one car out front, got 2 and 3. The Airbnbs, I'm not begrudging anybody because that's the only way you can maintain your home, have got people coming on the weekends, they have 3 and 4 cars. So the people that have lived there, like my in-laws, have lived there for 80 years, don't have a parking space. I had nurses in and out. They'd have to come in the wintertime when they had parking, park at my house and I'd bring them down. Or if I was working, I'd just walk because it was easier than trying to find parking on South Main Street. And I understand the visibility aspect, but the 2 spaces that you're given aren't going to stop people from wearing black and walking out in front of the street. And I know you had 2 people that were hit on South Main Street. Were they at the crosswalk? Or were they cutting in between cars like the college kids do? They do. But that doesn't stop the people that are trying to get in their car that do find a parking spot on South Main Street. cars here, and 2 cars going. It's hard to even open your door and get in your car. That's a safety issue there. But by taking away, you said 2 parking spaces, but it's 2 on each side of the road, so it's like 8 parking spaces for the people that live there trying to get in and out of their house. I just think that it's not a safety issue by giving up those parking spaces. Now you've added 8 people that are gonna be crossing those parkways because they gotta find parking somewhere else. I just think that that needs to be thought of something different. I don't, even like, on County Road 4, they have the reflective strips at the stop signs. Something like that at the crosswalks. But taking away all that parking, you're not helping the people that live there.
So you're against taking away the parking, not for adding?
I'm against taking away the parking.
Okay, I wasn't sure which way you were going there.
How?
Well, no, because you said you hate the parking situation. That usually means you want to get rid of the parking.
No, I hate the parking because there is no
So
parking.
you wish there was more.
Yes.
Okay.
Because the street was not
I get
designed
it.
with
No,
parking.
that's what.
You know, I mean, I don't know, the other side of the street, now they have 2 telephone poles that they haven't taken away one. If you could put angled parking in or something over there, but there's not enough parking for the people that own those homes and then have to rent to maintain those homes and the Airbnbs, everything else on South Main Street. And that little stretch from Hampton Street to downtown is crazy. I wouldn't want anybody to teach their kid how to drive going up and down there. Maybe the speed limit is a thing because you can go 30, but not there, not in the city. That's it. Did I go over 3 minutes?
I don't know if we set the timer, so thank you very much.
That's all I had to say.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for listening.
Next is our city manager report.
All right. As I bring it back up, apparently I shut it. So, city manager report. As part of this month's report, I am bringing forward the storm task force priority areas as requested by council, and I will hand those down to all of you. So, the task force communicated through surveys as well as staff met to talk about what their priorities were. Priority 1 is to maintain our current systems, and that would be continuing to fund ongoing storm and sanitary sewer maintenance, and making sure that that is continually added to. When I look at funding for this, the funding changes at all times depending on how much we're doing. This is currently in the budget, some of this maintenance. The second piece is supporting the ongoing support of the emergency response trailer. That goes into the same section. Priority 2 is digitization of city storm and sanitary systems and system inspection records. Implementing this comprehensive mapping and digitization system will require time and financial investment. We do recommend this as the second priority, including exploring an internship opportunity in the coming year. It would allow a student to collaborate with DPW on GIS mapping. The cost incurred would include the student internship. It would be a paid internship, GIS programming, and then staffing time dedicated to supervising interns, those stipends, and managing that information. Priority 3 is municipal and business engagement, and that group recommended allocating up to 40 hours between the city manager's office, Department of Public Works, and Planning and Economic Development Department to continue that shared initiative between those businesses and the other areas. Priority 4 is the ordinance update, looking at the ordinances that were recommended in that initial report to update it. 2 ordinances that should be reviewed are the ordinance related to sump pumps and then impervious soils to reduce runoff. Priority 5 is the education materials and community engagement. Again, this would involve resources to produce those materials, but they could be distributed through community engagement initiatives that the city already participates in. Often the fire department, police department, and others participate in a variety of community events. And they would be able to distribute those materials. However, the materials would need to be created. And then the ongoing priority item is the concept of daylighting Castle Creek. This is could be expensive, but one of the pieces of this is it's a long-term solution to what is going on. It would take many years to complete this. What they would recommend is that staff develop a plan of action for obtaining the properties that sit over Castle Creek as they become available, with a vision of daylighting the creek. From there, a reserve account could be created for the purposes of purchasing those properties. Things like property sales of other city property could be utilized to establish that reserve account. And then the vision with that would be to, again, bring that creek back to light rather than being under privately owned properties, allowing us to maintain that. So these are all of the recommendations, the majority of the recommendations in the report based on the priority areas as requested by council. Do you want me to pause there and then I'll finish my updates in case there's questions on that, Mayor?
Any, Councilor Peeler?
I like this, just from a glance. Do you? I mean, this is really your task force.
Well, it's a task force that's giving you recommendations on how to spend the money. And we have allocated some of the resources for it. So priority one, the ongoing support for what we're doing now. I think current year, we are there. I think it's something that you will need to consider in future years to continue to put those resources there. As we look at the other things, we did not put funding forward for internships or GIS mapping. That would be another consideration if we wanted to take that on this year. But yes, I think these make sense, and I think it does make sense to explore everything in there. I know the daylighting piece, which is the final recommendation, is much more long-term strategy, but I think that with that, we've had initial conversations, very limited, but Adam and I have talked about what could that look like if you were to set up a fund that could help do that. So I think that there's value in all of these pieces, and this gives you a map of how to get there.
I just want to know if you're pleased.
Nope, great work. Councilor Petropoulos?
Yes, I know daylighting the creeks are not going to happen for a long time, but meanwhile, right before it goes underground, it looks a little wobbly there. There's trees ready to fall in. Is anything going to be done to shore up the banks of the existing creek, particularly, I'm going to just say behind Colt Street, for example?
No.
Due to some pending litigation,
We
Yes.
need a big
I may not be able to comment on that.
Very good. That's good. All right.
There is a lot of private property, I'll say, over the creeks. And from one side to the other side on property maps, it's complicated.
Yes.
What happens when you get sued?
Great work by the task force. I would definitely compliment them. And daylighting it, we could ultimately put some gondolas down there and get some tourism funds.
I will say that the visions of daylighting that some of the staff have may include things like that I've heard. Not quite gondolas, but it's close. As far as other updates, just for awareness, city tax bills have been sent out. The City of Geneva bills are correct, and no additional bills will be sent out. The bills that were created by Ontario County and some of the other municipalities are incorrect and are being resent. Ours are not. We actually use a different service for that. And on the tax bills, the tax rate for current year, 2025, is $12.16 per $1,000 as of assessed value. The increases that people are seeing are due to the increase of their value of their homes and the fact that we're now at a 100% equalization rate. So that's just a piece on the tax bills.
The neighbors were paying for them before.
And other things, winter weather, crews are out. They have been plowing, applying de-icing materials. The temperature has been below freezing for several days. At this time, no winter parking restrictions have been utilized. But again, and I think we say this many times at this time of year, people are encouraged to use the weather event text alert sign up. It's on our website. Our website also, if we are going on that, always has like a red banner at the top that says alert, winter parking is in effect. We have not done that at this time. And then Christmas trees, crews are still picking up holiday trees. Residents need to place those trees in the front lawn by the curb, but not in the road. Trees can also be brought to the Resource Recovery Park, which is on Doran Ave, Wednesdays 7:30 to 3, and Saturdays 8 to noon. Those trees are recycled into mulch, and then the free mulch piles become available to the residents in the spring. So people are encouraged to do that. On the code enforcement side of things, in 2024, we had 264 building permits issued, slightly down from 2023 by 7. And then based on that, the projected improvement value on the applications is over $13 million in improvement to those homes. Now that's based on people filling out that part of the application. It's actually not mandated that they fill that out, so still really positive there. And then my final update is just that we have a work session of department heads and council scheduled for January 16th at 5:30 to continue the strategic thinking and development of our 2025 strategies.
Councilor Lavin.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. I know we're still doing just the quarterly financial reports to the council, but I'm wondering if we have had any changes in the distribution or the investment of our funds, our surplus, where they have gone to, and what kind of, is there a way for us to hear these things, to scrutinize, at least be aware of where we're moving the funds from and to, and also, because this is in advance of the next quarter, I've asked twice to see if we could see overtime monthly reports on how overtime that's being worked, who's approving it, and what the causes of it, so we know as we get through the budgeting year whether we're being penny wise and pound foolish in some ways. But to hear that report as part of our financial report, but to the manager through the or maybe to the controller through the manager, it would be good to know where that money, we have never answered the question of how that last happened. And so I'd like to see more scrutiny of the movement of the money, where it's going, from where to where, and where it's sitting with more frequency than quarterly, if we can.
Yep. So earlier, I believe it was earlier this week, I sent out a report through 12/31. It's obviously not, we haven't received everything for the full year. But I'm going to be doing a presentation in February, the council meeting, for those. The report does include overtime. It doesn't include who approved it and what for. On the financial side, it just shows what it was. And then it does have the investments in there. There's about $10.5 million tied up in CDs and they'll be tied up for quite some time. And then the I guess you'd call it the surplus after that. Is what would be in our money market account, and that hasn't had much movement because the end of the year it gets very, very small. And so as we're into January now receiving property tax revenue, that will be something we have to look at in terms of, do we open another CD for a certain amount of time to invest those funds as well.
And again, I don't mean to be a nudge here, but the use of our surplus in out-of-town investments is a policy issue for the city and the people who pay taxes here, the banks we deal with. And I think I know what we passed didn't require pre-approval for the shifts, but that doesn't keep us from having pre-knowledge of a shift that's coming, and so we can ask questions about why would we remove money from a Exchange Street taxpayer for what better return in other places. It would be good for us to be able to answer those questions when asked out in the community. But
And I just want to be clear that there is no surplus that's being moved around. It's our current spending. So it's all of our funds. So it's our general fund, it's our water, sewer. There's no surplus money. All of it's accounted for at all times.
I understand that. We just don't happen to know about it in real time. That's all.
I think we've been informed on how the investment strategy was going to be and why, if we did not invest with somebody on Exchange Street, we invested with somebody in the state at a higher rate. So I think that made complete sense, and we're informed of that.
After the fact.
Before the fact.
No, actually, we don't. It happens, and we hear about it in his reports later that they've moved money from this place to that place.
We haven't moved anything. It's all in the investment strategy that we presented to you before we put it in.
Okay, moving on. Thank you, City Manager. Moving on to unfinished business. Resolution authorizing the sale of city-owned property presented by our City Manager.
All right, so this is a second reading on this property following the public hearing that we had. It would allow us to convey the property to, next to CCN, to them.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Counselor Peeler, seconded by Counselor Gilat. Any discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Whitfield?
Aye.
Counselor Morocco? Oh, he's absent. Counselor Petropoulos?
Aye.
Counselor Gilat?
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi?
Aye.
Counselor Peeler?
Aye.
Counselor Lavin?
Aye.
Counselor Brennan?
Aye.
Mayor Valentino?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Next is a resolution, the seeker for zoning map amendment expansion of CB5, presented by Director West.
Thank you. So over the last few months, we've been talking about this expansion of the CB5. Before we can actually do that final adoption, we need to complete seeker. Staff has provided a draft of parts 2 and parts 3. Those are the portions that are the review by council as the lead agency of the potential environmental impacts, including a finding statement. At this point in time, if you'd like to amend that at all, I'd like to be very clear. This is council's review of the potential environmental impacts of the zoning change, and has been provided to you in draft form. So,
Need a motion? Counselor Lavin, seconded by Counselor Peeler. Discussion? Director West, thank you very much for providing that information to us ahead of time for our review and our input, and not having us go through it during the meeting. I appreciate that.
Here, here.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Whitfield?
Aye.
Counselor Morocco? Counselor Petropoulos?
Aye.
Counselor Gilat?
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi?
Aye.
Counselor Peeler?
Aye.
Counselor Lavin?
Aye.
Counselor Brennan?
Aye.
Mayor Valentino?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Next is the second reading of the zoning update of expansion CB5 that we just talked about, presented by Director West.
this is the last moment. This is your
Hope not.
final adoption of the zoning map change. If any questions or last minute adjustments, now's the time.
Need a motion? Counselor Lavin, seconded by Counselor Gilat. Discussion?
I have a question, please. This has been brought up before, but if you would just please explain this sensitivity to the 3 versus 5-story height on South Exchange Street. Would somebody please just go over that for me again, because there is a question about it with several people out there in the public, but also does as you know, the OEO site is basically 1 story below grade from Exchange Street. So you would use that point, the lowest point, I think, to measure 5 stories up, wouldn't you? You wouldn't be using the Exchange Street grade to measure 5 stories up. Am I on the right track there?
No.
No.
Which is an easy answer. So
Thank you.
a couple of things. First, the OEO site zoning is not changing. The OEO site has been zoned for 5 stories since the rezoning last year.
All right.
So there's no change to the OEO site.
Regarding the sensitivity to the height, is this an issue that has been studied in any way by any engineers that would it block sight to South Main Street?
We did
what I'm
this
asking.
years ago because it was a line of sight, and it was when we had City Manager Horn, I believe.
Okay.
Because we had talked about developing not just the OEO site, but a large partial in South Exchange Street. And there was actually studies done, and there was renderings
Okay.
of the view as you would look down through there. And I think certain people could be concerned or less concerned about that view and how it impacts their view, but there was minimal to almost no impact to the houses on South Main Street. And I think the important part, which Director West mentioned last time, was before any of this takes place, site plans go in front of our planning board. That gives us another
Right.
opportunity to give
True.
that view and that input.
Very good, thank you.
And I think the key to this is this change does not impact that at all. You've already adopted that piece.
Right. The map's kind of small.
Councilor
If you
Petropoulos.
control and plus on the,
Okay,
you zoom in.
very good.
Yeah.
I'm
So
not,
there
I'm
are
not
parcels-
arguing the point
Yeah,
anyway.
there are parcels near there that are being added to that height. The other thing I would say is, any building would not be invisible. So yes, you would see it. You can look now from the hill, and something that I've done and something that I know the city spent a lot of time doing before at, there are 3 and 4 story buildings right next to there that you can look at and see, if a building was 8 feet taller than that, what would it look like? You're going to see it. We also have a big lake, and people will still be able to see the lake. It will look different.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, but again, I think we discussed this last time. Looking through the proposal, one of the application items was effect on archaeological/historical versus, say, environmental. I said it before, I'll say it again, as long as it's not ugly. It needs to fit in with the current architecture that makes downtown historic. So just keep that, again, this could be years before anyone bites, but that's something, as long as I live and breathe, I'm not going to want to see as ugly. We already got a couple of, let's just build these things in the 90s after we tore down whatever was there in the 60s. Got to think about these things, because that's one of our assets, is the archaeological beauty of our downtown area and the surrounding area, for that matter.
Correct.
That's all.
And I believe the TUD takes care of that.
We also have in the new zoning a lot of requirements about the way buildings can be designed, requirements that make new buildings kind of match that aesthetic. But ultimately, some of that will come down to the planning board applying those. And there'll be review and a chance to have input on any building.
And again, none of what is being proposed changes any of that that's in the current zoning.
Correct.
Yeah, I was just going to thank everyone involved and hope we can move this through. And you come in here with that hat and talk about ugly. What do you know about ugly? All right, what do
Okay.
you know?
Order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Whitfield.
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos.
Aye.
Counselor Gilat.
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi.
Aye.
Counselor Peeler.
Aye.
Counselor Lavin.
I like the hat, aye.
Counselor Brennan.
Aye to what we're eyeing to, nothing else.
Mayor Valentino.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Next is local law, reducing the number of planning board members from 9 to 5, presented by our city clerk.
Alrighty. So this is,
Can we lump the next two?
this is the resolution to reduce the planning board from 9 members to 5 members. And
That's right.
we're planning.
We're good.
You know what a consent agenda is?
And it's a council request based on having quorum issues and just filling the board.
Great. Need a motion? Counselor Gilat, seconded by Counselor Petropoulos. Comments? Counselor Petropoulos.
How many do we currently have on the planning board?
9.
How many are filled seats?
Oh, how many filled seats? We have 5 now.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's 24.
Yeah,
Okay.
we have 5 on planning.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Whitfield.
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos.
Aye.
Counselor Gilat.
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi.
Aye.
Counselor Peeler.
Aye.
Counselor Lavin.
Aye.
Counselor Brennan.
Aye.
Mayor Valentino.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Next is local law again, reducing the number of zoning board appeal members from 7 to 5, presented by our city clerk.
The zoning board reducing from 7 to 5. There are 4 members on that board now. It's the same situation, just looking for quorum to do business.
Need a motion? Counselor Petropoulos, seconded by Counselor Gilat. Discussion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Whitfield.
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos.
Aye.
Counselor Gilat.
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi.
Aye.
Counselor Peeler,
Aye.
Counselor Lavin,
Aye.
Counselor Brennan,
Aye.
Mayor Valentino.
Aye.
Motion carried.
So the next new items on our agenda are all kind of standard items that need to be done on it. The
Steve,
majority.
Can I ask a question on that, what we
On-
just
on
did?
what? Yeah.
On the two local laws, does that automatically change the charter? Or do we have to make a charter change?
Charter change is included in the local laws.
Okay, so it's already in
Yeah,
there.
as I reviewed things, there were sort of minor inconsistencies, so I kind of revised the code and the charter to be consistent.
Okay, so
correct
we don't
those
have to
issues.
go into the charter change.
No.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Because
Good
we have
question.
so many places where we never did that.
So yeah, the next are kind of some standard boilerplate motions that we're going to have to make. The first one is going to be a resolution establishing the regular council meeting nights presented by our city manager.
Yeah, and I think you just hit on it. Annually, we have to establish all of the next resolutions, and we use basically the same resolution every year to say that when our standard meeting nights are.
Which is the first Wednesday of every
Yep.
month,
So
unless we have to modify it because of a holiday.
Yep.
So moved by Councilor Peeler, seconded by
Okay.
Councilor Grimaldi. Discussion.
Just a question
Councilor
for
Lavin?
thinking in the future, is if there's a, is there something that precludes us from having a consent agenda for routine business that doesn't require an individual vote, that's done in most places that I'm familiar with? Any council person can pull something off the consent agenda, but in terms of when you have all these routine things that are just, clear votes that we know, to have one vote that clears the
Covers them all.
consent agenda.
Yeah,
You mean block them?
But,
Block
basically
vote?
block them.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's,
If you're talking about block voting, you could block A, B, and C, for example, just as to go through them quickly. Is that, if that's what you're talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, I
well,
believe that's the question.
That's done routinely
Yeah.
Yeah.
on these
Yeah.
routine things
Yeah,
that we
it's
don't
at the
need to
discretion. It's at the discretion of the mayor in this case,
Okay.
or
Yeah.
I mean, or the person.
No, I
making the motion.
understand, it was just towards the future here.
And I've been a little hesitant because sometimes there's been discrepancies in counselors that want them separated. So traditionally, I think we've separated them because some counselors might vote yes or no on certain items.
Sure,
But,
their routine is they pull them for individual, that
But-
everybody has the full, they don't need a vote for that.
In the future, if you see the agenda and you'd like to see those items blocked and there's consensus council, I'd be happy to block them to expedite the.
Can that be
meeting.
done with a group of minutes, like we did as well?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
just speed up things.
Let's block A, B, and C right now.
You
Well,
already
let's vote
have
on
A
A
on the
and
floor.
then
Already
we'll
voted on
block
A.
B and C.
God
So
dang it.
clerk, please call the roll on establishing regular council meetings.
Counselor Whitfield,
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos,
Aye.
Counselor Gilat.
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi,
Aye.
Counselor Peeler,
Aye.
Counselor Lavin,
Aye,
Counselor Brennan,
Aye.
Mayor Valentino.
Aye.
Motion carried.
So I'm going to block B and C together unless there's any, okay. Both the designating the official depository for the city and designating the official newspaper of record presented by our city manager.
Similar to the last two, it designates the official newspaper as a Finger Lakes Time, and dispository as any financial institution within the city.
Need a motion?
We don't have to name one?
No, and we have not. The clerk did a good review of them, and this is our standard resolution.
Council Brennan made the motion. I have a second. By Council Lavin. Discussion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Whitfield,
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos,
Aye.
Counselor Gilat,
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi,
Aye.
Counselor Peeler,
Aye.
Counselor Lavin,
aye.
Counselor Brennan,
Aye.
Mayor Valentino.
Aye.
Motion is carried.
Next is a resolution declaring certain DPW equipment surplus by Director Venuti.
Thank you, Mayor. I request to make an amendment to the resolution to add additional piece of equipment, a 2015 Freightliner, which is on the form in front of all of you.
Okay, we need a motion.
It's just a brand
For the
name
amendment, so moved.
truck. Yeah, it's a truck.
We're gonna, the resolution is amended by adding that, so you're making a motion on the resolution, please.
Okay, on the amended resolution that we have
Yes.
before us.
Yes, thank you.
So moved.
Second? Mayor Valentino? Any discussion?
Why? It seems to be it's not that old. Why is it surplus? Just curious.
Which are you speaking of, the mowers or the truck?
The Freightliner business class, M2.
It's at a time in its life where we can get a pretty good return
Oh, okay.
on the used market
No.
to offset some of the cost for our new sweeper that we
Okay.
received earlier in 2024.
Okay, so you
I
have a new
appreciate it,
one.
thanks.
Counselor Petropoulos.
Yes, I see here 12 freestanding litter receptacles. I recall not too long ago, people downtown were clamoring for more of those. Why are we getting rid of them?
The current ones that we're surplusing are relatively small. They're 19-gallon receptacles, and the labor it's proven to take to maintain them is such that we purchased 32-gallon size, which are more standard, and we've put throughout the downtown area.
Okay.
What's that gonna do, six?
Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Whitfield,
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos,
Aye.
Counselor Gilat,
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi,
Aye.
Counselor Peeler,
Aye.
Counselor Lavin,
Aye.
Counselor Brennan,
Aye.
Mayor Valentino,
Aye.
motion carried.
Next is a resolution 2025 municipal cooperative agreement presented by our city manager.
And this is in the same vein of standard things we do on an annual basis. The municipal cooperative agreement is for our health insurance. We're a member of the consortium, and anytime the consortium adds new members, which they have added 14 new members, we have to re-up that agreement. And so that is what this is every member municipality to stay in the consortium has to adopt the same agreement, and then I'll have the mayor sign off on that.
Need a motion? Counselor Grimaldi, seconded by Counselor Gilat. Discussion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Whitfield,
Aye.
Counselor Morocco, sorry, he's still not here. Counselor Petropoulos,
Aye.
Counselor Gilat,
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi,
Aye.
Counselor Peeler,
Aye.
Counselor Lavin,
Yeah, aye.
Counselor Brennan,
Aye.
Mayor Valentino,
Aye.
motion carried.
Next is a resolution setting a public hearing for the CDBG, Assisting Liquid Orchard Incorporated. You threw me a curveball. You put the B before the D. Presented by Director West.
Thanks, folks. The CDBG economic development grants are something that we can apply for to fund a business at any time. It's a rolling application. From my perspective, the city needs to be the applicant on these, and from my perspective, any business that wants to locate in Geneva, I'd like us to pursue this grant funding for if they qualify and if they have a good plan. In this case, the business is hiring the grant writer to write the grant. The city will be the applicant. The city will have to administer that grant, which comes with a cost. This grant comes with administration funds that will cover that cost. So it seems like a win-win to me. I hope you'll support us helping this business pursue these funds.
Need a motion? Counselor Grimaldi, seconded by Counselor Brennan. Discussion. Counselor Peeler?
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about Liquid Orchard?
I can. I'll open up. It's in the briefing that we provided, but they are investing in kind of a new kind of juice production method. They've been working with Cornell Agritech on that process. That's a great economic development partnership for us. They have a full team that is always reaching out, especially in the food space. So they are interested in locating up there. They've already started purchasing equipment. We were talking about trying to lease them some space to store it in the GEDC. And we'd like to help them purchase more equipment and get started with the production of this juice here.
And remind me, the community development block grant money comes from the federal government or
Correct.
from the state government?
Federal government through the state.
So
So we apply to the state.
I like incubating new businesses, but as a Genevan who's not born yesterday, we seem to incubate businesses on the public tax dollars money, and then they peace out. And this is a wash, rinse, repeat process. So I'm wondering if it's the way that we're doing it that's the issue, or if it's just the complete lack of realization that we really can't reasonably do long-term food or juice production in New York State, and maybe even in Geneva, because not one of them has lasted, and you can take that to the bank. So I don't know why we're going after another food producer when every single one of them have pieced out.
So I
know you're taking a risk on them, but we've taken a risk on three other ones.
So I understand that it does happen that you help a business grow, and sometimes they leave.
All the time they've
We've
left so
certainly
far.
seen that. We also have started in Geneva the largest canned food company in the entire country that has stayed here since they started. So
That is
Seneca Foods.
They've also partially left now too, though. They're leaving.
Sure. I mean, they're in my hometown in California. They're one of the largest companies
Right.
doing this.
and they've more or less left. But what I'm not asking about how doing business in general is good. I'm wondering why we're investing in the business model of businesses that repeatedly leave.
Well, my 2 cents would be that Cornell, the Ag Tech Park was put there for food and beverage industry growth.
Absolutely.
And
That's another. Why are they investing in businesses that leave?
This is a leverage with the hopes, and there's a lot of development going on at the Ag Tech Park. So this is a leverage to try to create that attraction, and in the hopes that kind of spawns more development on the Ag Tech Park land. There's a $20 million building going up now,
Yeah,
I believe.
Listen, it's a roller coster of morale for the public to be invested in these businesses, and they employ our graduates and they employ our people, and then 5 years, 6 years, maybe less, they leave.
Oh, great Coach Valvani said you missed 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah.
Well, you also, you made the point, Your Honor, that that federal investment of 20 million is permanent, will be there for a long time, and it's there because we're doing this other work too. And, Chobani moved into Amsterdam, now one of the biggest yogurt producers, and there's a guy over in Waterloo who's producing yogurt as well. I don't think we're aware of everything that comes and stays as well. It's
Yeah, I think we're uniquely aware of the ones that leave.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Whitfield?
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos?
Aye.
Counselor Gilat?
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi?
Aye.
Counselor Peeler?
Aye.
Counselor Lavin?
Aye.
Counselor Brennan?
Aye.
Mayor Valentino?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Next is set a public hearing for the CDBG Best Program Grant Application presented by Director West.
Thank you. BEST is the new name for MAP at the state level. This is our micro enterprise assistance program. So we're closing out our current grant. It's a rolling application. So as soon as we have this closed out, and in fact, before we have it closed out, we are working on applying for the next round that will help us fund 6 more businesses, hopefully in the next year and a half.
Thank you. Need a motion? Counselor Petropoulos, seconded by Counselor Whitfield. Discussion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Whitfield?
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos?
Aye.
Counselor Gilat?
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi?
Aye.
Counselor Peeler?
Aye.
Counselor Lavin?
Aye.
Counselor Brennan?
Aye.
Mayor Valentino?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Any appointments to boards and commissions tonight?
I have one.
There's one on the
Counselor
desk.
Peeler?
So I'd like to make a motion to reappoint Mr. Buckley to the Historic District Committee, and this is a procedural reappointment so that he can have the proper time to sign his oath. We've already appointed him once, and there was a lapse in the oath, and we need to.
Thank you for that explanation.
Yep, it's been buttoned up, and that's why there's a reappointment, and that's
Sec-
already been handled. That he's going to finish that oath.
Second by Counselor Gilat. Discussion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Whitfield?
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos?
Aye.
Counselor Gilat?
Aye.
Counselor Grimaldi?
Aye.
Counselor Peeler?
Aye.
Counselor Lavin?
Aye.
Counselor Brennan?
Aye.
Mayor Valentino?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Next is mayor and council reports. I'm going to start at my right with Counselor Brennan and come all the way around the horn.
Well, let's see here. Mayor. The Shade Tree Committee met. It was routine. There's nothing large, if you will, to report, except that the work continues. Director Venuti's still here. He was present that day. They planted a few dozen trees in the last, say, 5 or 6 weeks, which is a big deal because they just beat this cold weather. And they've got plenty more trees to do. And it's, as I've said before during this report, it's a very, very active committee, and an awful lot of work gets done. But you don't see it. Trees disappear, and then new trees get planted, and nobody notices it. But it's all about the Shade Tree Committee coordinating with Joe and his crew. The town borough one-man committee for firewood was very active. In December, he sold $675 worth of firewood, which puts them over the $13,500 mark. I delivered that money to Adams Hotel this morning, and I'd like to see some proof that it got deposited too, Mister.
You got a hotel?
And,
Airbnb?
I don't have any reports other than that, Mayor, but I did want to say that this is the beginning of a new year, and we have just completed in 7 of our cases, our first 12 months of our first in our term, and I have to say that I think it went well. I think that there are some failures. I have to be honest about that. I do think that we were a little slow catching on because we just didn't have any training. The city manager was very good about providing us with a lot of reading material, and I'm not demeaning that at all, on how to get up to speed. But I would like to see this new year be a lot more productive. I really would. I have to say, I'm going to say out loud here for the record that I'm going to support Councilor Lavins. He's likely to bring up the committee conversation again, and you're just going to have to be prepared, because I do think that there's a lot of value and a lot of mileage to be had in considering, or at least discussing, how we could become more productive as a council. I just think that we can do an awful lot to actually help support the staff as well as provide policy and direction. I really believe that. I like to also say that, and I know we're on track for this, but we need to employ our comprehensive plan. We need to understand it better, and I know that we're going to be doing that in the next few weeks. But there's also this upcoming strategic thinking session that I would like to also make sure that we get as much mileage as we can out of that too. And then not deviate too greatly in these next 12 months from from these things, because they're large all into themselves. Because I have to say again out loud, in just 11 months we're going to be considering another budget. I learned 11 months isn't very much, and the budget is a very, very big deal, and I hope that we're going to be in a better position to create a better and healthier outcome for this next go around. And I know it's not easy to be done, but growing revenue has got to be a priority. Director West is on it all the time, and we need to find ways to support that. That's what I mean about the committees. But it's easy to cut expenses, painful, but meaning to say it's easy to just redline stuff. That's not going to last much longer. We've got a lot of work to do. People are angry in the public. People are angry across the country, for that matter. Money is tight. We're going to be hearing about pilots, and they're a necessary part of the financial landscape. That's the way it goes. But I would like to be prepared 11 months from now, far more than we were prepared this last time. Thank you.
Sounds good. Councilor Lavin.
I think I'll let Mr. Brennan talk mostly for me. I do want to ask the manager for one update for next time, which is to, give us a sense of where the discussions on consolidation with the town's fire and city fire talks are going, how much pressure we're putting on those talks to occur, and the hopes of how they would occur, what kind of public access there would be for this issue. It may be one that goes nowhere, but it's, as I've said a number of times, better to reach and fail than to not reach. So, thank you.
Councilor Peeler.
Thank you. I just want to wish a Happy New Year to all our residents. I also want to wish a warm welcome to Mr. Blowers, who's now back in the team. I missed his absence, and I'm glad he's back. His leadership and intelligence was welcomed even before he left. So I'm glad you're back. The planning board did meet a couple weeks ago, and it was a brief meeting, and it was just to have a public hearing for the land sale that we finalized today with CCN. And that was a very uneventful meeting. It's exactly how every planning board meeting should go. Short and unanimous. And there was no voting. It was a non-voting meeting. It was just an opportunity for public feedback for the land sale. I don't really have, there's no other reports, but I have been hearing things from my constituents. One of them is the reassurance about winter parking. There hasn't been any notifications going out that people couldn't park, but lately there's been a little bit of snow that's more than a few inches. So people have been asking me, can I park? Can I not park? And I'm telling them, you don't get the notice, don't worry about it. Am I right with that?
You are correct with that. I'm looking at Director Venuti, and we have not had any winter notifications
Okay.
for parking.
Other than not to eat yellow snow, I don't give a lot of advice for how to, go out into the weather. The second thing is I'm hearing people ask me about the marina. Like, where are we with the people, with the, what is it, the RFP or the R?
So it's a bid, and we are nowhere until we have approval from Department of State.
Shite. Okay, so I'll let them know that. So the second, and lastly, there is a rec board advisement, a report that we're supposed to be getting from a, or not rec board, a recreation study that was done, or is there going to be an outcome from that?
It's not completed at this time. It's still ongoing.
Okay, that's just what I'm hearing people ask about that.
Yep.
That's it. Thank you.
Counselor Grimaldi.
I went to the Housing Authority Board. Jim McCormick is now the chairman over there. And one of the things they were talking about is the possibility of selling some of their scattered housing, which, in my opinion, would help the city, but we'll see where they go with that.
Counselor Gilat.
Okay, Police Budget Review Board, they did a great presentation. I thought it's a great group. I think it shows that if we find the right people on these committees, they can get a lot done. And it's just proof right there. So I'm excited to be part of that group. We have a good group. I think we'll go pretty good with it. I think it's going to help a lot when we get towards budget season too. As far as report from bid, they completed their 2025 budget. It was passed by the board in December. That was after going through our cuts or our reevaluation of our budget. She had to go through and revamp theirs, and they had it passed on December. New snowflake skyline is up over Seneca Street. Looks pretty cool. I do know there was an effort getting it hung. I have an inside source telling me that wasn't easy, but he had some other words too, but I don't want to say it doesn't matter. Anyway, Jingle in Geneva was a huge success. Mayor's tree lighting was a favorite as always, especially carriage rides sponsored by Tom Burrow and Son and Steve DeVoli, Century 21. And the spring NYSTIA, which is New York State Tourism Industry Alliance conference, is going to be held in Canandaigua in April 22nd to 25th. We will have over 200 tourism industry representatives and vendors from around the country here in our region. CAT plans on sitting on the planning. CAT is on the planning committee and hope to host a familiarization, or FAM as she calls it, tour here in Geneva. And that's all I have.
Counselor Petropoulos.
Right. I'd like to say Happy New Year to everybody, both in this room and out there in YouTube land. A few things to report on. The LDC meeting today, we had Bo Wright, the school superintendent, come down and give a presentation with some of his staff. Basically, the next thing up is a capital improvement project for Geneva schools. This will be all the schools, and the central office will be getting, so it's mostly replacing mechanicals. It's concentrating on safety. One of the things they are looking to do is relieve the vehicular mess at the West Street School. The thing to remember is, they emphasize this latest capital project is going to have zero tax impact to the community. They're going to get 9 out of $10 back. We're not paying any extra for this capital project as citizens. The other thing is to start passing the word, because sometimes you don't hear about these things till after the fact. On January 30th at 6 p.m., there will be a public hearing for this capital project that they're looking to do. That'll be at the Geneva High School auditorium. Make a note of that in your calendar. The school district will be sending out a notification, and the actual voting for that will be on February 6th. Okay. Other than that, there wasn't much in the LDC today, but that was the big presentation. Right. Obviously, downtown's been the scene of a couple of break-ins. Citizens were concerned. I know I visited at least two of the businesses that were affected. Don't know where to go first. They did catch the perpetrator. I'm sure everybody or most people knows that. It was a modus operandi. Good job, Geneva Police Department. Meantime, what are we going to do about it? A lot of talk about a neighborhood watch. So I met with the police chief on Friday, and Chairman Noon from the PEBAB was also there, so we got a lot talked about. The way it's going to work, the way the police chief envisions it, is that the city itself, council, city management, city staff, will have nothing to do with a neighborhood watch liability. So who's going to run it? Ideally, the neighbors are going to run it with the oversight of a police sergeant. And the way it's going to work is start passing the word. If you sit on your porch all day, just take notes and sit in your porch. Or if you want to patrol, there'll be stuff coming down the pike as to how it's going to be done. There will be training. There'll be do's and don'ts. It's going to be observe, pass the word to the neighbor supervisor. He will get that info to the police department. They will take action. So you'll hear more about this, but the talk is there. We'll see what happens. I did mention to the LDC, since they're taking on neighborhood initiatives to some degree, to mention this at their next neighborhood meeting as well. It could be a good thing. I understand we had a neighborhood watch decades ago, and for whatever reason it stopped, but maybe now we want to do it again. But the city's not going to have to expend anything on it, nor are we going to be organizing it. That's going to be up to the neighbors. Stand by for news about gatherings for that or sign-ups. Moving right along, I guess we have a town hall scheduled for wards 4, 5, and 6. It'll be our third one. It'll be Saturday, January 25th from 9:30 to 12:30 at the library reading room. We'll have free coffee and donuts for everybody. Come, everybody's invited. The last one we planned as in accordance with open meetings law, simply because other counselors may show up, and if we're all in the same room talking about city stuff, technically legal advises that's the way to go. So I presume our city clerk's good with that date. If you're not, let me know. But so other than that, it's going to be a meeting like we've always had. I encourage everybody to come down. You don't have to live in Ward 4, 5, and 6, although do pass the word if you run into anyone. I'll do the same. Finally, the fun stuff. I would like to give a shout out to Geneva Arc Lodge at the Free and Accepted Masons. And I believe it was December 19th. They worked with the Salvation Army to distribute food packages to the elderly in the area. In the past, I know I've done that. I wasn't able to. I have a VA conflict this year. But I want to give a shout out to the Brothers of the Lodge who did go out, and also to the Brothers of the Lodge who work with the Salvation Army ringing the bell over the holiday season. And finally, I am pleased to report that Murphy's Market on Exchange Street downtown won second place in a statewide competition for the coolest holiday window. This is statewide. It looks good for her. It looks great for Geneva. So if you're down on Exchange Street, stop by, give her a pat on the back. Other than that, I think I covered everything. If I didn't, you know where to find me. Thank you.
Councilor Whitfield.
For the recreation department, they had a great holiday with 3,300 public skaters utilizing the complex during the extended school break. They start their regular schedule again this weekend. They are looking forward to February break programming. Please check the website or Facebook pages for updates. For the Green Committee, says we will be meeting next week with the chair of Canandaigua's Climate Smart Task Force to learn about the past accomplishments and future goals to explore ways they might collaborate in promoting the Climate Smart initiative within our communities and with Ontario County. There was a question as, has the city of Geneva re-enrolled as a climate smart community?
So we've been working on that process. So we use the sustainability coordinator as part of that, which is a shared position between the city and the town. So we do have application materials for that. I think there was a little disagreement on what that committee is, and so we have to update that.
The program is a gateway to receive grants. The more points a community earns by promoting certain practices, the more likely the city would be to qualify for grants. For example, in December, in collaboration with BID, we helped reinstitute recycling and composting at the city-sponsored events at the mayor's tree lighting ceremony. In addition, Jim Kennedy and John Pruitt came to our November meeting to discuss the likely scenarios going forward with waste proposal in Ontario County. We are taking part in a survey conducted by the Genesee Finger Lakes Regional Planning Council regarding developing a regional climate action plan. There are 2 surveys, one for municipal leaders such as city councilors and community members. We encourage everyone to participate. Also, I wanted to raise the issue that is faced with the elderly who had a gold membership or has a gold membership at the YMCA. I want to send my sincerest apologies because it is never my intentions to take away from the people who need help the most. It is in representation. There is somewhat a solution to this. Geneva Free Library has a free Tai Chi class. Please look on their website for more details and other activities that could suffice for what had been subtracted from your daily lives almost instantaneously. The classes will go from Wednesday 2 to 3 p.m. in the community room. Daddy's Do Care will be starting its father engagement program on March 3rd at 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. for days, and March 4th from 5 to 7 p.m. for nights. It will go on until May. Further information will be sent. Please look for bulletins on the library website and social media. And for direct details, contact me at 315-830-8585. And I wanted to raise the issue on the particular topic that I always raise. When Maria Carlo and others wrote on a news topic, it truly sent a certain type of emotion over me. It wasn't what they said, it was the return message to the editor from the woman who responded without the thought of others. I thank her for that because it keeps showing me month after month that this stuff under the rug is starting to leak out. It is quite diabolical how I am the only one who has raised the tender topics as such besides Councilor Lavin on a few occasions. I will always address issues that have shaped and defined the very fabric of our city and our nation. Gentrification, racism, segregation, and prejudice. These changes are not new. These challenges are not new. They have been with us for centuries, insidiously woven into the system and structures of our society. Yet, as James Baldwin once said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. Today, I face these truths head on. In Geneva, like in so many communities across America, we see the double-edged sword of gentrification. On one hand, we celebrate investment and revitalization. On the other, we mourn the displacement of long-standing residents, families, and small businesses, often people of color who can no longer afford to live in the neighborhoods they built and sustained. This is a form of erasure, one that echoes an injustice of segregation, a policy that once legally confined black and brown people to certain neighborhoods. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. warned us, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. When we allow economic forces to push out our most vulnerable neighbors, we are complicit in a new form of segregation, one that divides not by law but by income, race, and opportunity. We must ask ourselves, what kind of city do we want Geneva to be? Langston Hughes posed a similar question in his poems, Harlem. What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun? Are we to allow the dreams of our neighbors, dreams of stability, belonging, and legacy to wither under the weight of systemic inequality? Or will we as a city stand together and demand policies that protect affordability, preserve diversity, and prioritize inclusion? The prejudice that feeds these systems is often subtle, yet its effects are profound. It tells us that some lives matter less than others. It whispers that equity is too expensive, that fairness is too difficult. But let us reject these lies with the boldness of Ida B. Wells, who declared the way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. And the truth is this: racism, segregation, and prejudice are not relics of the past. They are alive in our housing policies, our schools, our policing, and our economy. To dismantle them, we must act with intention. So, dear ma'am, dear sir, Black History Month is 1 month that is meshed in with presidents' birthdays, some of which who were slave owners. The noose is a metaphor in representation, oppression, control, fear, and suppression. Its the historical association with lynching in the United States give its profound symbolic weight, especially in the context of racial violence, systemic racism. Beyond this history, it signifies the constraints that hold individuals or communities captive, restricting freedom and progress. The image of tightening noose conveys a growing sense of danger, pressure, and tension, reflecting an inability to escape an oppressive or unjust situation. It symbolizes silencing and suppression, often representing the systemic forces that stifle voices, rights, or identities. It serves as a reminder of ongoing cycles of injustice where harm and control are repeatedly inflicted on marginalized groups. In its essence, the noose is a powerful metaphor for historical trauma and the urgent need to confront and dismantle systems that perpetrate harm, seeking instead of liberation and justice. So when one could compare the lives of an entire ethnicity that when combined makes up the majority population of the world to inflatable animals that doesn't exist in real life and the mentioning of lynching, it allows me to see that what I speak against is alive and thriving in our community still, yet becoming more prevalent. When the mayor makes his proclamation next month about Black history and has nothing to say about the noose incident, it only tells me one thing besides the fact it will just be a scripted message of recognition, not only with definition, because Black and brown history is 365 days a year. Thank you, Jackie Augustine, for always sending the right message and not being afraid to speak when the heat is in the hands of those who utilize power as a restriction to the rights of the people. I'll support you and stand with you and for you when you raise awareness and shed light on Geneva that hasn't been shed before. Your work never goes unnoticed. There's a suffering community that's not equal to the community that thrives, the forefront of Geneva. There's a need for housing justice, protect affordable housing through rent controls and zoning reforms, support community lands trusts to empower residents, ensure that gentrification uplifts without displacing, economic opportunity, invest in minority-owned businesses, provide equity, access to city contracts and funding, create job training programs from underrepresented groups, education and awareness, mandate anti-racism training for city employees, incorporate diverse histories into our schools, create forums for community dialogue and healing. We must approach these challenges not as problems to be managed, but as opportunities to demonstrate our values. As Maya Angelou reminded us, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better, not just the minimum. I think it is great that it is moving along since my extended stay on the city council, having not just the minimum. I don't want to just hear, I think it's great that it's moving along since my extended stay on the city council. I haven't seen this much progress in such a rapid time because we are often pushed and swayed to voting on matters that haven't even been thoroughly examined by the new council members. Geneva can be a beacon of hope, a city that celebrates its diversities, lifts its marginalized, and creates a future where no one is left behind. We are not here to preserve the status quo or to serve our own egos. We should be here to build a better Geneva, a Geneva that values equity, innovation, and opportunity, a Geneva where leadership is defined not by power, but by purpose. As Frederick Douglass said, if there is no struggle, there is no progress. Let us embrace this struggle together and progress toward a brighter, more equitable future. We aren't going nowhere. We are here to stay. Happy New Year.
Here, here.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank the city clerk and staff for all their effort and the mayor's tree lighting ceremony and the GPD that was doing identification for children. I'd like to thank the city manager and the interview committee who did due diligence to put a comptroller in place, and I'm very happy to see Adam back in that seat. The city manager and I went to a couple of, there's a new group, not brand new, but it's been around just a little bit. There's a mayor roundtable group, and it's a bunch of mayors from smaller cities and city managers who are trying to combine their voice to reach out to the state to talk about better state aid for cities.
You were at FLCC.
Yes, we were at FLCC. We're actually making some headway, I believe. You know, we had some state representatives at our last meeting. We're trying to find a different way to ask to get our voice heard. It's a monetary thing. We like the AIM funding was increased temporarily. We'd like to see it increased permanently and increase more, or find other ways for the state to be able to support smaller cities to kind of relieve some of the mandates the states are putting on us. So that's an ongoing effort that a group of mayors and city managers are trying to perform. You know, our voice isn't as large as the larger cities like Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse. So we're trying to combine to scream a little bit louder. I'd also like to invite everybody out on January 20th for the Martin Luther King Committee Junior Committee event that's going to start at 9 o'clock at the Bicentennial Square. So I hope to see as many people as possible out at that. Councilor Peeler, you mentioned you had another comment?
I did, and I'm sorry. I was so enthralled with Adam's rejoining, I forgot to add this to my list. But it echoes what Jim was talking about. I was sideboarding with Pat, and he's received complaints about this. So this is pertaining to the school project to rearrange their parking or driving or traffic flow in Ward 2 and on the outskirts, really in between Ward 2 and Ward 3, over on High Street and Nursery. And the people that made complaints to me, they had different reasoning. One of them was land use, one of them was flooding, one of them was how it's going to affect everybody in those areas if they do this, and how it's going to bring the traffic to areas that were never intended to get this traffic. And there were a variety of things. One gentleman was saying it'll never happen because the city won't approve it because it's an engineering nightmare. But all three of them echoed this one sentiment, and I 100% agree with it. This problem was not caused by the natural progression of our school system and our residents. It was caused by the failed experiment of splitting North Street and West Street into the grade system there was. So instead of West Street being K through 5, and instead of North Street being K through 5, and having them be regionally set up, what they did was they invited every single person in the city to bring their kid to West Street from across the city. And so now you've got everybody in the entire city bringing their child to West Street. And this isn't because there's more students now. There's actually less students now. Because we had St. Stephen's had 10 times the number of students. And when I went to West Street, there was more students in general, more young people in general in Geneva. But North Street is bigger. It's meant to handle a larger group of students. And the city was parsed up in a way where West Street didn't get as many students as North Street. So this burden that they're putting on the community, especially around Wards 2 and Wards 3, is to further Band-Aid what really should be acknowledged as a failed experiment. And this North Street, West Street split has only been going on for about 10 years now. And the people who made these decisions would like to conveniently forget that this was caused by them, but us residents that know the truth know that this was caused by this failed experiment. And it's been a nightmare for the people that have lived in that area. And especially with people just bringing it's not buses is the problem. It's the actual refusal to use the busing system is the problem. And we've got everybody bringing their kids in one car at a time, one kid at a time, one car at a time. This wasn't a problem when West Street was a normal school, or was a split school, a regional school, because all of our sorry butts had to walk to school. Because we lived right there, and most people in North Street walked to school because they lived closer there. So here we got this, nationwide problem with obesity and engagement and kids getting out there, and now where everyone's driving their kids to school wholesale, and you got people driving their kids to North Street wholesale because they live on West High, which is just a downhill. You could sled to school from West High to go to West Street. So I just want to say that I'm really disappointed that this traffic situation is going forward, and it should be addressed. A lot of people think this is a city council thing to fix, but it's a school board thing to fix. And I tell them, contact your school board. So it really is a school board problem. But this experiment to reparse the way these schools are set up is a failed experiment. And us residents who know the history know it's the truth. They need to admit this truth instead of constantly saying, well, we have this idea and it didn't work out, but instead of fixing the idea, we're just going to change everything. No, they're round peg in a square hole, and it needs to be addressed.
You do know that the schools were segregated by ethnicity in those days.
That's not true now.
It's not true now.
It's not true. It's not true then. It
I'm
wasn't
almost
true
there.
now. It's completely, that's cap. Stop the cap.
Order,
Right?
order, okay. So listen,
Based on what?
this council has a responsibility for performance management, and I had a request to have those performance management forms returned to me tonight. I have 5 out of 9. I'm gonna give us till Friday to submit that information on performance management so that we can continue with that. If it's not submitted by Friday, I will continue to move forward with the ones that are available. Need a motion to adjourn?
Was there a plan to do those reviews publicly?
The plan is to take all the reviews, do a consolidated review, and present it.
Present it
We
publicly?
we will meet in executive session to have that discussion.
So there'll be
Performance management will be in.
There'll be no public discussion of our assessment of the
We can
city manager's
we can discuss that in
performance.
executive session.
It's executive session material.
Yeah, I don't know of a single government that doesn't do its review of its chief officers in a public way. The school district does it, everyone else does it. I love our manager, and I think it's a great
We'll talk about that
thing.
in executive session. Okay?
Sure.
Need a motion to adjourn? Counselor Gilat, seconded by Counselor Petropoulos. All in favor? Any opposed?
I'd like people on the record saying what they think it's.
I'm trying to get a narrative organization.